Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Southern Outdoorsman Podcast. We're on our hunt here in North Carolina. Actually, just wrapped up our hunt. And we got Jordan Jones here to tell us what we did wrong. Jordan, how you doing?
I'm doing all right, man. You guys suck. Never come back, please.
Jacob, how are you doing?
I'm doing good.
Hell, you should have been hunting in your front yard.
I know. We were just out front.
Yeah,
in front
we
of the
had some
cabin,
pretty good ones come by.
and there was one that stepped out. I mean, all of those bucks for the most part would have been fair game, but that one was it 8-point or 10-point? He was 8-point.
It was
right?
an 8-pointer. Yeah, I thought he was gonna have a 10 because he looked like he had that G4 popping up, but it was just a hump.
But dude, he was a nice deer, real nice deer. So he came by. If we were up there on the mountain, he came. Listen, we ripping and roaring with the bow at that point if he would have walked by. But so we just wrapped up our week here, and super excited, Jordan. Can I get you on? It's kind of last minute because, dude, I was thinking back, and we can talk about how you and me got to know each other because you kind of reminded me about it. I kind of forgot because it's been so long.
Yeah.
But when we were up here, we actually ended up having one of our guests cancel. I'm like, man, I know there's got to be some other guys up here. And you had just killed one opening day. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, I forgot about Jordan. I'm like, dude, because you told me in the past, like, dude, if you ever come up here, let me know.
Yeah,
he's
let
like,
me know.
he's like, dude, we'll do something. And I was like, oh, I'm going to reach out to Jordan and see if I can get him on the podcast. And we finally made it work after some scheduling issues and all that kind of stuff. But it worked out good, hopefully.
I end up working out just fine because we thought we might record tomorrow. Now I can go chase. I got a couple good ones on camera, so I might go chase them, try to tag out.
Okay.
Be done, and then focus on out of state.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's sweet. So you were telling me this earlier. Well, we'll kind of get started because we're going to talk about mountain hunting here. Some public, some private land, but like just some different experiences and things that you've kind of learned throughout the years that maybe some guys miss out on. And there's one I'm really interested in talking about, specifically talking about food versus bedding in the mountains and that conversation. Mm-hmm. But you and me got to know each other through, I think it was our Facebook group that we run called Run Gun Whitetail Hunters. And you were telling me, and I really forgot about this. I'm kind of surprised you remembered.
Yeah.
Like, I was at the time looking at, what was it?
Lock on
Windwalker versus the Limit and all that kind of stuff, which are these stands that were made kind of late 80s up to the mid 90s, late 90s, and they kind of stopped and they just got they got bought out, and now they're starting to make stands again.
They lost their patent. That's what it was.
Oh, that's what it was. Okay.
They lost their patent after 20 years or so. Whenever they come out, then they try to bring them back out, and then they had a little run there for a couple of years, and then just people stopped buying them because you had so many other tree stand companies out there. They used to be the king.
Yeah, lightweight tree stand. I'd learned about them. It was like 2018, and I made a post on that Run and Gun Whitetail Hunter group about if anyone had one, and I guess something about trying to get a hold of somebody, and you sent a photo, and dude, it was like the holy grail of tree stands. Like there was, you said like 20 of them,
roughly.
Yeah, just hanging on the wall.
Yeah, it was between mine and my dad's, and we had a whole bunch of them because I grew up, and something I want to kind of dive into, and I think that you guys will like it is whether I grew up mobile hunting. Like the whole mobile hunting thing that kind of come along, and I love that people are doing it now. But I like to try to pride myself that we always say did it before it was cool, did it before social media came out and saw other people doing it, and so. And man, I was 8 years old hanging in those little 5-pound tree stands. 8, 9 years old. My dad is hanging me up there with no safety harness. And now me, a grown man, I won't get in there. Without a safety harness. I got something to come home to.
What were y'all? I'm real curious. Just while we're talking about that, what were y'all using for climbing, like to get up the tree? Was it sticks? Was it screw and steps?
So screw and steps. So Cranford Easy Climb.
Okay.
So they are a company. They made those little trifold green steps. So that's based out of Salisbury, which is only an hour and a half from here or whatever. It's farther than that. So we would just carry those in a little fanny pack, man, and just screw them in a tree. And I got pretty well versed in screwing those things in. I didn't start hunting with sticks until doing set stands. Maybe I would hang some sticks, buy the old Mare Step ones from Walmart.
Well, they never really had like mobile sticks back then.
Sure. Yeah.
I know Lone Wolf had some stuff come out like maybe early 2000s.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you're talking about, back, especially maybe in the 90s, early 2000s, everybody I knew that was using a lock on, they were using screw and steps if they were trying to be mobile. Mm-hmm. We grew up mobile hunting. It was just climbers. Like that's what we could use so easy back home. It's like everybody would have 3 or 4 climbers. You know, you might place some in a couple spots that you're going to go hunt. And then also you packing in like a Summit or Old Man climber. And, you know, that's how you stayed mobile until, you climbed a pine tree so many times you killed the pine tree, which happened a couple times.
Well, see, I mean, with mine, we always had those, like I said, we had the fanny packs. We'd carry 7, 8, 9 steps with us. And, you know, I could get about 22, 23 feet high with 7 steps, you know, between stretching. I used to be skinny, you know, and I could really climb a tree. And now I don't know, I guess too many bush lights got to me, and it's kind of hard to stretch as much as I usually do, you know. And but yeah, man, we had those stands. My dad had a bunch of them, you know, because they used to be $100 to buy a tree stand, and they were very, very well made aluminum style stands. And we just walked these mountains, you know, and with them, and it was nice to have, because Dad never hunted with a climber. He always carried a 2x4, and he would climb the tree and put a 2x4 in between a fork and just stand on the 2x4. He did that, and he tried the old Baker climbers, and they just, you know, they'd fall apart as soon as you try to put them on a tree. And he said, I got to have something. And when he found out those were starting to be made in the 80s, you know, he sat on the ground a lot, did all that stuff. And I still have his original lock-on windwalker that he had back in 1989 or something like that. Still have it. Killed a lot of deer out of it, which I've hung it up. It's retired now, so because I'm a little bit too fat for it now. But you know, I'm 6'1", 225, and those little windwalkers are made for 5'9", 180-pound men. You know?
Yeah, really like 150, 160.
Yeah.
Honest, you know,
well, see, it bothers my knees because the seat height's only 17 inches, and you know, that hurts my knees, sports injuries and things like that, and kind of doesn't help me. But the limit, it's 21-inch seat height. So that's what I normally go with now.
Now, what was it? I'm real curious, especially when you kind of grow up hunting the mountains and stuff. What were some of those lessons you kind of learned from your dad early on? I mean, kind of like hunting the mountains and everything, you kind of as a young kid following along with him. What were some of those things that you took away from him kind of early on?
Never settle. So never settle. Okay, when I was a kid growing up, I would always ask, Dad, you hung me on this white oak and I seen 20 deer, but you went up there and you shot an 8-pointer. Like, why can't I kill the 8-pointer? Now, I might have shot that spike, you know, I might have shot that doe or 4-pointer. I was a killer growing up. If there was something breathing around me, I didn't like it. And I shot at it, you know, I did my best, you know, I flung a lot of arrows when I was a kid. And up until, you know, just a few years ago, I was still flinging arrows. And, but man, honestly, what he taught me was just because it's pretty, the main thing, just because it's pretty doesn't mean it's right. You know, just because that is where you think you need to be, that ain't always the answer. I mean, it's when you have a gun in your hand, maybe a little different story because you can shoot out there to where you really need to be. But with a bow in your hand, you just want to. When you get there and you say, God, there's this big old saddle right there. He looks so beautiful. There's 5 white oaks. They're raining, and there's trails hitting all right here. But there's that one little white oak that's got a 12-inch stump down there that's hammered. And you say, God, there was a big one walked by 80 yards, and he's down there feeding on that white oak. And you go down there and try to figure it out, why. And between, you know, I'm not a huge tactics guy, but you just go down there and you just look and move. Always be willing to adapt. He never hung in the same tree twice, ever. If he found where he thought he needed to be, usually he would do like a Friday evening, Saturday morning, but then he'd move. If he didn't see what he wanted to see, move. So he's always changing and adapting, and that's what I do now. Like, I don't hang set stands. I don't do preseason scouting. I don't do any of that stuff. I take the stand, put it on my back while I can deer hunt, and take off.
A little bit more context here, by the way. I think we already mentioned it, but just to kind of go over it a little bit more, you're from Western North Carolina,
Western
correct?
North Carolina, yeah.
Mountains.
Yeah, mountains.
Nasty.
Mountains.
Yeah.
We learned that this week.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sore right now, I'm not going to lie to you.
So you can go to the easy part of the mountains or the hard part of the mountains. Now that I've got fat, I like the hard part or the easy part of the mountains a lot better. And I bought a side-by-side for a reason. And you can see why. Now that I assume that you guys have kind of learned, I mean, obviously you've learned what not to do a lot more than you have learned what to do. And man, I've been hunting this since I was, you know, able to hold a bow in my hands, and I'm still learning what to do. And man, it ain't easy. And the main reason why I think that I'm not a tactics guy, because tactics can go completely out the window here. just because of the pure size. It's kind of like preseason scouting for elk in Colorado. I mean, what tactics do you know that you really need to know other than the wind? Where do the elk or where do the deer like to frequent? What you wind, and I think that's the most important things here. If you don't have that, then you're gonna struggle.
And that brings up a great point, talking about the wind, because we've learned the wind loves to shift around here, depending on what kind of side slope you're on, or if you're on
It's
top.
just a circle, man.
Or like if the ridge 400 yards across from you is higher than you, and kind of what's happening with it eddying or whatever. How do you focus on the wind out here, like early season versus like getting to the rut, leaves are falling off, and kind of maybe like later in the season? Because I feel like it was a lot more challenging than we thought it would be. We thought it would be a little bit more thermal based, but like the wind really has never stopped. Like it'd be slow in the morning, maybe wind, pre-dawn, then it kind of died down a little bit, and then it picked right back up, and it was just like kind of all over the place. So
this is the home of the whiskey wind. We'll just say that. So you're more when you get into steep mountains like this in the western part of North Carolina, Western Virginia is the same way. Southeastern Kentucky, we're all in that in the Blue Ridge Mountains here. There's really no game plan that you can really have all the time, because if it says north on your phone, you step out of your truck, it's blowing south. You get to where you're walking in, it's blowing from the east. When you get to where you're hunting, it's blowing from the west. So it's more or less all you do is just put the stand on your back and go hunting. And that's where I have become successful, is because I never worried about the wind until I put a smartphone in my hand. I put a smartphone in my hand and I started hunting out in the Midwest where wind's huge, because it blows the same way most of the time. And I started trying to do that here, and it didn't help me any. So I'm like, you know what? I don't care what the wind's blowing. A big, huge plus for me of not hanging set stands is because I can hang a stand based off of which way the wind's blowing. So I put the stand on my back. I mean, I have a tree diaper. I'll carry a saddle once in a blue moon, but honestly, like I just go in and just figure out what the wind's going to be. And I don't hunt where the deer are. I hunt where they're supposed to be, or because I think a big buck finds something first. And I know that I'm kind of going off topic here, but I think a big buck finds where they want to be first. And then as soon as all the other deer moves in, he shifts and tries to find somewhere else. So if I go there and there's a ton of sign, I try to hunt off of that. I don't hunt directly on all that sign. Sometimes I will, depending on what time of year it is. But I mean, most first white oaks are falling. Sure, maybe I might. But when you get kind of later September, October, I try to stay one step ahead. I'm 99% of the time one step behind, because how many times have you walked in the woods and you say, God, if I'd been here a week ago, there wouldn't be a deer alive in here, But yeah, man, just following that has helped.
That's a good point with the wind, because first off, we're going to get some YouTube comments saying that makes zero sense and you got to hunt with the wind. YouTube people are interesting. Different audience from our audio listeners, guys.
Sure.
Love a lot of you guys, but some of y'all put some crazy comments out there. And,
put your Crispies on, come walk with me, and I'll show you what I'm talking about.
Well, and some of the other mountain guys that we've had on in the past, especially since we started putting stuff on YouTube. Again, audio, it never really came up, but YouTube, because it's so easy to leave comments on it. A lot of guys that don't hunt in the mountains are like, well, you have to hunt with the wind. That makes zero sense. Like, you're never going to kill deer without the wind. But then you see these guys' walls, and they're killing hammers in the mountains on public land or on private land. Doesn't really matter. And like, wind is like a secondary factor just because of it's not stable. It's not consistent necessarily on the direction that it's coming in from. And that's something I think it's hard for people to understand, specifically if you live in a lot more flat, gentle environment, which, I mean, we've hunted river bottoms before where it swirled a lot, but it was kind of predictable based off like the habitat.
How it was going to swirl.
It was like
hey, it's going to hit this tree line and it's going to roll and it's going to do this or that.
Yeah.
And you can predict it.
You have to pay more attention to thermals here.
For sure. Well, we thought so, and we did that. But then the wind was like, no, not today, sucker. We're blowing this way.
I'm just going to take them that way. I mean, here, if you can focus on thermals are going to fall, thermals are going to rise. It's a little bit easier whenever you do go in the woods to say, okay, I need to be below the sign now. I need to be above the sign this time of day. That helps, but still, I mean, there are pockets in Western North Carolina where you can get to a little bit more flat land. Some of the public pieces here that you can get up on top of the mountain. There's some flats and open, pretty places and things. And the wind is a little bit more predictable. It'd be kind of like hunting a little bit more eastern North Carolina or eastern Virginia. It's a little bit, but I know where you were hunting. There's no predictability. That's why I don't bow hunt it early much. I mean, I know some places that I can bow hunt there that I could probably be successful, but man, it's too hot for me to climb those mountains right now. I got enough private land to where I say I'm gonna fix that.
Hey, real quick, you're talking about too hot, and it's like getting like 72 degrees during the day.
Dude.
Like, dude, for us back in Alabama, it is probably
This
what,
would be
in
a
the 90s?
massive cold front for us.
Are you serious?
We got out of
Yeah.
the truck the other day. It was 42 degrees. We were like
Sunday morning.
giddy. We
Yeah.
were giddy. We were like, dude, look, it's 42 degrees. Holy
Yeah.
crap.
And don't get me wrong. I mean, yeah, that's cold here. I mean, that's cold for early September. But I have hunted with frost on the ground on open day deer season here before.
Dude,
And
that's-
31, 32 degrees in the
that's
morning.
silly.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
silly.
And I actually, this probably is not a very popular opinion, but deer don't like cold fronts here in early season. They do not like cold fronts. Now, the day before and the day after, they do. They love it. But the day of the cold front, you could probably just go eat breakfast.
Man, like honestly, in Alabama, people get real excited about when we get a cold front and it's down in the 20s. Most of the time, at least that me and Jacob have both seen this, most of the time when you go out and it's like a 20-degree morning, you're not going to see deer until like 11
Yeah,
a.m.
there you go.
Because they're going to let that frost burn off.
Yeah.
And they're just like us, man. They're Alabamians.
Yeah.
It gets 20 degrees. They're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah,
You know, like
yeah,
they don't like
yeah.
it. And, I wanted to get back to the wind thing too, because it's a really interesting topic. When it comes to the wind being inconsistent, it's like if you go to the Midwest or even really where we're from in Alabama, you have pretty defined bedding areas. Whether it be a pine thicket where we're from or a CRP patch in Iowa or something, that's where they're going to be. So a lot of it, I guess, is trying to not blow your wind towards those known bedding areas, food sources, or trails. Out here, I feel like that is all very unpredictable.
Yeah.
And so is the wind. So it's like, just go hunt. Like, you don't know where he's
Everything
coming
is a
from.
bedding area here. Everything is
Yeah.
a bedding area. It don't matter if there's laurel or if it's big, wide open timber.
So it's funny you say that because, and I'm glad, I kind of wish we would have had you on before we started hunting because it probably would have changed, actually would have definitely changed perspectives.
No,
a lot.
I'm glad that you learned.
For sure. Because
your
like
own.
now, like when you mentioned like everything's a bedding area, we mentioned this on our outro probably weeks ago by the time this episode came out, but we've been finding beds in like big beds everywhere, open timber, in sapling thickets, on ridge points, on around big rocks, around on benches, like everywhere.
Logging roads.
Like everywhere you would walk, you could find a bed. If you looked hard enough, you would find a bed half the size of this table. And you're like, well, this kind of it's cool, but I'm like, it's
sucks.
everywhere.
It sucks.
Yeah, I mean, it's like we're like back home. It's like I know that pine thicket. They're gonna be in and around that pine thicket. They're not gonna be right here in these wide open timber because there's enough hunting pressure. They're gonna be in the pine thicket.
And they're going to be in the pine thicket,
Yeah.
so you can sneak up to the edge of it. They can't see you.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
But like out here, so many beds we were finding too, and I'd love to get your take on this specifically. Association with the wind, but also like hunting. It seemed like a lot of these beds, there's a few that were in sapling thickets that like the deer didn't have a visual advantage. They could kind of see underneath it, but they can't see very far. But a lot of them were found on the side of these ridges where they can look downhill 150 yards or
It's
more.
early September.
And
Imagine when the leaves are gone.
Exactly. And it's like, how do you get on a deer in the afternoons? And we talked to our buddy Zach White, who was on the podcast a little while ago for one of these outros. And he was like, after hunting up here for a year, he's like, I'd rather hunt mornings up here and walk in the dark than try to come in on an afternoon hunt because you're walking up on these deer and they can see you from like so far away.
Hundreds of yards.
Yeah, and you're like,
And they can hear you too.
that too.
Oh, yeah.
And another thing about it, and this is where I kind of want to get to talking about bedding versus food. Another aspect about it is what Zach was saying. I'm curious to get your take on this. A lot of these deer, especially some of the bucks, like they're not blowing at you. Like if they see from distance, they're just getting up and like slipping off or holding tight until you walk by them. And back home, that happens every now and then, but a lot of times, like you're going to hear, like if they see you or definitely smell you, they're gone and they're blowing. Or like up here, it's like the first day we did a loop, we didn't hear a deer. I think we heard one deer blow at one point, but we were going through all these beds. I'm like, we have to be bumping deer, but they're just seeing us and hearing us and they're just not blowing when they're leaving. Do you see that much?
So it's kind of 50-50. A big buck won't blow at you here much unless if you miss him with a bow like I did that one last year. I mean, he blew 143 times. But a lot of times you can walk right by them and they'll just slip right off the edge because they have a quick escape, right? And so they don't want you to know where they are sitting because you can see them. Most of the time, I think, and this is, just my opinion, if a buck can't see you and you scared him, it's when he's going to blow. If a buck can see you and he sees what you're doing, he can slip off and you'll never know he's there, right? And that's just been my experience here, because I don't know how many times, man, that I've been in the woods that, say I had a camera over across the ridge and I'm going there, boom, I see a whitetail, never heard nothing, never saw anything, and I'm like, I can see almost to my tree stand, but you can't see that little bitty motion going through the woods there, man. It's tough here. Like the area where you guys are hunting is so vast. Top third of the mountain is where they love, but there are some close places too that they love. Some really, really close spots that's where a lot of those deer this time of year are, in those close spots. It looks beautiful up there, but they don't frequent up there this time of year.
Okay, I'm glad to bring this up because I want to throw it back at Andrew. So day one, we went up there and we were eating the mountain. Okay, just going over all these ridges. Andrew tried to walk me in the dirt. Listeners heard me a couple, ever how long ago on the outro, talk about that whole experience.
Death March.
And then we come back to the truck, and Zach, our buddy Zach, met us there after driving all the way over from Kansas. And he was like, "Where were y'all at?" And we showed him. He's like, "Dude." He's like, we can kill a buck way lower in elevation than where you guys are going. He's like, they might be up there, but he's like, they're down here. Like, we don't have to go that far up. And there was like a twinkle in my eye. I'm like, please, like, where's that at, dude?
Yeah.
And, we kind of chased that a little bit around and, found some sign. But the interesting thing about this early in the season, like, we were up here opening week hunting, is the lack of, like, rubs. Like, we found one pocket, one little area of a big ridge system that there were some really big fresh rubs. I mean, deer were snapping, a beech sapling that was 2 inches diameter, 2.5 inches diameter, chest high, and shredded it, broke every branch off it, shredded it, had it all twisted up.
Ripped it in half.
And, left some other big rubs in that, like, within a half an acre of that spot. And that was it. That's all. Like, we found a couple other small whip rubs, I mean, tiny little things. And that was it. And I'm like, man, this is our third year in a row we've done these early season hunts, like opening weeks. Like, we've done Georgia 2 years in a row, and then we came up here. And it's like just that lack of buck sign is what, to me, I feel less confident in, especially if you're trying to find feed trees. Like, I'm trying to associate that buck sign to a feed tree or an area where there's oaks dropping to confirm that the buck's using it if you can't find tracks. And we never really necessarily found it other than that one little area. And to me, that's what makes it kind of challenging, specifically early season up here, is like there's food dropping everywhere. There's oaks, there's especially a lot of red oaks. And it's like trying to figure out, like, where can you have the most confidence? So, I mean, what is your take on that, like with the food aspect? What is your thought on that in the mountain?
All right, so I'll start by, when you're talking about trying to find a lot of early season rubs this time of year, I have a feeling that these deer are more, and this is just based off of what I have seen, these deer are more apt to rub next to where they're bedding, right? In the middle of the day, they're not necessarily rubbing where they're going to, or like where the final destination for them, whether it's a feed tree or food plot, whatever. Whenever all the other bucks start to show up and the challenge starts to happen, that's whenever they're hitting a lot more trees in late September, early October, late October, and then they're making scrapes all year long. I'm a firm believer they do scrapes all year long, right? It's a way that they talk to each other, right? And as far as like food, I think food is more important than bedding to me. I think the whole aspect of trying to find where they bed, and this is just my area, where I hunt, what I grew up hunting, and kind of what I know and what I see. I think that you drop me off in a place I've never been to before, the first thing I'm gonna go look for is food. I'm not looking for bedding. I don't care where they bed, just because I'm trying to find out where they're going, because the last thing I want to do is go to a new spot and blow everything out of the proportion. I will figure out from where they are feeding to where they are coming from. That's going to be by just sitting in the woods, whether it's running trail cameras, sitting in a tree stand, or I find where they want to go, I'll look at the trails. So that's why I think food is way more important.
Let me run a situation by you.
Okay.
And I want to get your take on it. We did a big loop in this area that we've been hunting. Some big sign up on top of one of the ridges. We sat up there, saw one fawn that morning. I say that morning, it was 11:55 in the morning when the fawn came by, doe fawn. And that's where all those big rubs and stuff are. And there's beds all on top right there. Like, there's big sapling thicket. We got in there before daylight, big sapling thicket, and there's beds everywhere. Big beds all over the place. There's red oaks dropping up there. No wild oaks. We ended up having, after that doe came through, we had a deer down below us start blowing. Again, 11:30 in the morning, or 11:45, 12 o'clock. So we decided to drop down the elevation and start side hilling, get 200, 300, 400 feet down, start side hilling back, and just looking for white oaks. And we ended up finding one. And the side of the ridge is super rocky. Like, you could see trails, you could see some tracks, but it was hard to tell if there was actually feed sign there, other than trying to find notch caps and stuff like that. Found one white, some acorns underneath. Three big trails, two paralleling just below side hill, just below the white oak, and then one cut up right next to it. That was pretty worn out. We ended up walking by it because we're like, it looks good. There's trails here, thick cover all on that side of the ridge, and it's just below where those rubs are at. Probably 150 yards, 200 yards off those rubs. But we ended up keep moving, trying to find something else that was more definitive sign under it. Ended up not really finding anything. Found some red oaks that there was some feed sign on, but that was it. In a situation like that, if you find like one isolated white oak like that on the side of the ridge around some thick cover with some trails coming by, if you didn't see rubs or necessarily like abundance of food or feed sign right there just because it's so rocky, is that something you probably try to give a sit at and try to see what that would look like?
If it's the only thing I found, for sure. I mean, if it's the only thing that I found, for sure. I mean, I'm not going to go walking across all these mountains all day. I found what I needed to find. Like, okay, I see feed sign. Is there a little bit of buck sign? Yeah, there's buck sign close. I'm going to sit here maybe in the evening and in the morning, right? And then what I will do from that point, I didn't see crap, okay? Obviously, either my wind was wrong or something. I don't know. Or maybe I'm just behind on that. Maybe I'm a day behind or 2 days behind because, like I said before, once other deer find what that big buck found, I think he moves on. And it's hitting it right whenever it's immediately hot or whenever those first big bucks find it. That's so hard to do, especially in these big mountains, because every tree's an oak tree, and it's so difficult. So put a bow in my hand, put a tree stand on my back, and I'm going to take off, and I don't know what I'm going to do. And I go in with zero game plan. Like I'm saying, I'm not saying if I find this, I'm sitting down. I'm going till it feels right. If it feels right, and like I said, I'm wrong 95% of the time. Otherwise, I'd have a house full of big bucks, But I try to find something that says, this is it. I'm not walking any farther. Maybe my legs are tired, or there's giant green, fresh rubs. Okay, why would I go anywhere farther? There's so many. It's so hard to. I think we think too much about it. Right. There's way too much to think about whenever you're in the woods, and nobody ever does that anymore. Everybody just goes in. Okay, well, the wind's bad, thermals are going here, this right here. Just go hunting, man, and I promise you'll be a lot more successful because you won't think too much about it. Just if it looks pretty, that ain't always the answer, but if it looks good, it feels right. If you can climb, if you can screw in that step, or you hang your ladder stick and you say, I'm nervous because I think he's going to show up here, that's where you need to be. But if you go, I don't know, that's tough.
Well, it's that gut instinct as well after enough experience that puts you in that spot and have that gut feeling, because that's one thing, we've hunted, we said we've hunted mountains before. I've hunted the Ozark Mountains of Arkansas, which is nothing as rough as this. I mean, it's pretty big elevation, but it's nothing like this out here. But again, that gut feeling of like when you find what you're looking for and you have confidence and you're setting up on it, and you kind of build that gut feeling based off lack of, sightings. Like you sit on a spot you feel good about, you don't see any deer after a sit or two. Well, that wasn't right. Let's keep going until I try to find something a little bit better, a better situation. So,
or you just walk past all this stuff like we did with that white oak, and we get to the end of like the area that we were working through, and we're like, yep, that was it. Yeah, that was definitely it.
That was 100%.
I want to talk about going through the season. We're talking about opening week right here. I don't really know when this is going to come out, so I want to kind of transition through the season.
Sure.
So like you're going into October, you're going into November, leaves change, temperature drop, like everything is just changing. Does your approach change at all, or are you still doing that exact same thing?
Do the exact same thing.
So you're still looking for hot oaks with sign around them, essentially?
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely, because the deer go through 4 changes a year, roughly 3 to 4 changes a year between, like during deer season. You have whenever they're losing their velvet, then you have the food starting to fall in the woods, and then you have they got something else on their mind, and then they go back to food driven. That's what I think the main four is. Well, you have that from when the first acorn hits or the apples or whatever. I mean, I love hunting apple trees. That's a big buck recipe, bunch of apple trees. But whenever these things start falling, they're not done falling until November here. I mean, sometimes a lot of times white oaks here won't fall until the start of October, late September, start of October. So you're really getting a lot of fresh. You'll get red oak, buck oaks will fall August. Then you got your red oaks that are falling late August, mid September, even into October. Then your white oaks hit last week of September heavy. I mean, you'll have your one or two white oaks here and there that fall early, but mainly the big mature oaks that are really starting to fall later September. So why would I change, right? And then as you get kind of later into October, I'm looking at, all right, I'm really starting to watch these bucks starting to bachelor group back up, right? And I know that we've all seen that is, man, you have that one big buck and then all of a sudden it seems like it's early season again. You've got 5 bucks on camera coming the same, whether it's eating out of a corn pile, eating it under a white oak, whatever. Then I start to transition into the rut. But usually I'm not hunting here during the rut. I'm out of state. I go out in the Midwest. But I start hunting the does then at that point. I'm trying to, like whenever I do come back, like this year, I'm only going to take a week off. Last year, I took off 3 weeks during November. So I was all over the place. You know, I got lucky, killed a deer quickly in Iowa, and then went to Ohio. I missed the deer I went there with a longbow. But there's really not much change from, say, second opening day of deer season to the rut for me. I don't change much because the deer aren't changing much. They may change the feed trees, but they're not changing what they're doing. I'm packing on all the weight I can because I'm not going to eat for 2 weeks because I'm trying to chase a woman or chase a doe.
Let's talk about also terrain features. What kind of credence do you give to terrain features? Like what attracts you? Do you even like really pay attention to it very much?
I do, sure. I mean, we all do. I mean, saddles, benches, top thirds, obviously, yes, you have to. I mean, because creek crossings, big. I mean, like I said, I hunt a lot of private land, and some part of my private land has Christmas trees in it. Some part of it, there's a lot of different terrain features in a lot of different places, and obviously my favorite to hunt is a saddle, off the side of a saddle, not on the saddle, because a big buck I think he goes on the sides of them, and he might just pop over it. He don't walk through it like you picture it in your head. But yeah, man, I do focus on terrain features a lot. And it's more or less like whenever I go in, I'm not very good on a map. I'm decent. I can read a topo map. Okay. I'd rather just put my eyes on it. When I go up and I say, okay, well, there's a bench coming off the top of this mountain. I'm going to go check that bench because there may be a scrape on it. There may be something there. Are there trails going right around the side of that ridge there that says, there's horn trees all over it? Is there an acorn tree falling on it? And there are a lot of those aspects I look at it. Here, top third of the mountain. That's where you need to be. Top third. Very, very seldom, unless it's early season, you need to be on the bottom third, because they're closer to water, obviously, and there's a lot more green usually down low here. But as far as terrain, my favorite is a saddle coming to a bench, and there'll be a mountain goes right up above it. It's just a big buck recipe around here, man. I love it, and that's what I do look for. Like if I'm going to look for a terrain, that's what I'm going to go try to find. That's not always the case for me. I don't have that on a lot of my properties. But creek crossings, I like those when it gets later season or rut.
I don't want to go past that terrain feature we was talking about. You're talking about a saddle that drops to a bench that has a mountain face next to it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Is that more so like a pre-rut spot, or like what's your thoughts on that?
Depends on if there's food there or not. If there's food, I mean, it's just a big, because the bucks will lay just over top of that so they can go around that saddle, or they can just get right on the other side of the mountain super quick. They don't have to climb some big peak. A bench is a good place that they'll bed as well. And you're kind of getting in between that, right? And it depends on what's there. Mm-hmm. What time of year am I seeing it? What's there.
Man,
I got so many questions.
I ask them, man. I'm here to.
So that's one of the questions I was going to ask as a follow up to that is, if somebody's wanting to go out there and figure out, you're saying, I like your approach because it's super simple, and I agree. I think most people overcomplicate deer hunting, myself included. And that like a more simple, just straightforward, like just go out there and figure it out is always better. But a lot of times the biggest hurdle is that first getting started.
Sure, absolutely.
So, it's like, let's say someone's listening to this and they want to get started. They want to go out there. Maybe they're a newer hunter. Maybe they've been hunting for a long time, but they want to start hunting some mountains. How do you get started if you're looking at a place?
Yeah.
What are you looking for to then go put boots on the ground and start figuring it out?
So I'm going to go on Onyx, and I'm going to do my best to figure out terrain features. I am like, okay, and when you pull up to a place, you can kind of tell, like, there's a mountain here, there's a mountain here, right? I'm going to go and try to find, getting started, I'm pulling up Onyx, or I don't care if you use Spartan Forge, I don't care if you use Onyx, I don't care. Pull up something that kind of shows you what might be there, whether it's hardwoods, pines. I know there's some layers on Onyx that you can pull up, and it shows like oak trees versus pines and stuff like that. Like I said, I'm not very well versed in it. I'm more of a just put the phone in my pocket and take off kind of guy. But as far as like a new hunter, if he's standing next to me and he says, "Where do I go?" I say, the first thing you do is open up your ears. And a lot of people don't think about that. Is open up your ears and listen. Listen for blue jays. Listen for crows. Blue jays will tell you right where the acorns are. They love acorns. You ever notice that?
I mean, now you say that, I do, but never thought about that previously.
Look at him grinning, man. He's like, he's giving up the sauce.
Yeah. So listen, and that's something my dad taught me a long time ago. He said blue jays will tell you where the most fresh acorns are. So they're the one because they don't like them when they're green. They like them when they're brown. I mean, they'll eat them now. But listen for blue jays. Listen for crows. Crows will tell you where the acorns are. They'll eat them as well. Not as prevalent as what a blue jay does. So I'm sitting there and I'm listening. And I say, okay, because what can the deer hear? They can hear those blue jays too. So if your main focus is food, like mine is, I'm listening for that. Okay, I go right there to right where I think the blue jays are doing their thing, and I'm going to tell them like, hey, go listen. If you don't hear anything, just kind of take off walking. Go to what you think looks pretty. It's not usually ever the answer what looks pretty, but go to where you think looks like there should be deer here. Start putting your head down. Start looking for sign. Look for trails. Look for so many different. There's so many, like us as deer hunters. We know kind of it's just boom, 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 and it's literally only a 1 second thing here, there. Well, there's no sign here. Just keep pushing a little bit farther. Grab your maps out. Well, there's nothing that looks pretty right here. Well, there's a saddle here, or there's a steep drop off, and then those lines get a little bit farther apart. So maybe there's a bench there. Go there, because that's a lot of times where the deer are going to want to be. That's kind of the way. If I'm going to tell anybody to get started, always listen first.
Find them with your ears. I like it. Also, too, I thought that's not where I thought you were going to go. I thought you were going to say, listen, and you can hear the actual acorns dropping out of the tree.
Mm-mm. No, there's acorns everywhere.
Well, so here's the other thing, by the way. You said buck oak. Yeah. I don't know what a buck oak is.
Water oak, buck oak.
So I just looked it up. It looks like a mountain chestnut. I actually just looked it up.
They are huge acorns.
It's a mountain chestnut.
Okay. All right. So this is what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
About that specifically. We call them mountain oaks.
Yeah.
So it's a mountain chestnut oak is like the name of it, whatever. And you typically find them on steeper slopes and higher elevations. So
rocky faces.
Rocky faces. So for instance, when we were hunting this week, we got up over 4,000 feet. We did not find an American white oak, which is the white oak that everyone thinks of.
Flaky. Yeah.
Flaky bark. It's got the smaller acorn, and it's the one. It's like the white oak that people talk about when it comes to deer hunting. The mountain oaks, we have them in Alabama, and we have them where we've hunted in Georgia, and it's like the deer will eat them if they have to. They'll be opportunistic. Like if their trail goes right underneath one that's dropping, they might stop and grab one or two of them, but they're not going and like hammering those trees. Is it different here?
No, there's no difference. That they, like you said, they will only, if there's no other acorn in the woods, there'll be some buck oaks or mountain oaks, wherever you want to call them. There will be a few of those, and they'll pop in and eat them. But I mean, if you're hunting public, yeah, I mean, that's the only thing that you have, sure. But I'm throwing out a corn pile if I'm on private and there's no acorns, and that's what they're going to hammer. I can show you on my phone right now with acorns falling, deer that are hammering a corn pile right now, because buck oaks and red oaks are really starting to fall now. Right. And, I think obviously we know that the white oak is that's the mecca. That's what you want to find. Red oak's next. And then buck oak, I think, is even farther down. They'll eat browse before they'll eat buck oaks, or mountain oaks. And when you get so high in elevation, that's really all you're going to find is those mountain oaks, buck oaks. You're not going, you'll find some red oaks, things like that, but yeah.
So up high, are you still keying in on that then?
I'm not going that high where the acorns are falling right yet, where if there is 0 acorns but there's 1 buck oak, I'm not even going to focus on it. I'm not going up there to say, all right, well, those 2 acorn trees are falling. I'm going to go to like where there's browse. I'm going to go to where maybe there's trails, some crossings, things like that, because it's not a preferred food source for them.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so essentially, correct me if I'm wrong here, but you're getting a starting point, say with a terrain feature that interests you, and then you're going in there and you're locating the food and how it relates to that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. So I don't use Onyx as much as I should, because I don't do like the offline maps and things like that. I just picked up a 183 acre farm, place to hunt, and I haven't looked one time on Onyx at it. And maybe whenever I get there, I'll pull it up. I know I'm going to have 0 service there. I should definitely use the offline maps, but what I'm going to do is just pull up and just look at the mountains. I mean, my eyes are as good as a map, in my opinion, unless I'm, 10 states away. That's where I use it most, is whenever it's out of state. But yeah, man, I'm literally just pulling up to a piece of property and I'm taking off. Like, I don't care what the terrain features are. I don't care what food is in there. I'm going to go put my eyes on it myself, and then I will go. And main reason why I don't do a lot of scouting, because I know a lot of my places very, very well. But you'd be surprised. I do most of my scouting and trying to find what I need to find before daylight. Got a flashlight in my hand and I'm finding the fresh oaks before daylight, especially this time of year.
My mentor told me that the highest compliment an outdoorsman can receive is to be called a woodsman. Mm-hmm. That's straight woodsmanship. That's what that is, bro.
Well, I learned from an old school guy. Mm-hmm. I learned from a guy that didn't throw out his first bait pile and didn't buy a camera until 2013. And the only reason why he even throws out a bait pile is because we have a couple pieces of property that we have to try to draw them from. They're fantastic places to hunt, but there's no food on it. So we do it for camera candy, and that art of woodsmanship is lost to me. Now, one good thing that I like about our generation and what's going to grow up into is technology can teach you woodsmanship. A lot of people hate on it. I hate on it a lot. I can be honest with you. But it can teach you a lot more woodsmanship if you have somebody there that's old school that can show you or tell you why that is the way it is, and
that's why this podcast exists.
Yeah,
it is.
It is.
And it. That's going to lead you to more success, than the other things, I feel like.
Well, also versatility and success, where you can go to different places and have success as well. Mm-hmm. Like where you're well versed in, like, you modify your skill set. Like you're talking food, you go to Iowa, instead of looking at oaks, I mean, there's some there for sure, but it's like, okay, where's destination food sources from like corn, soybeans, what's standing, what's cut, time frame. Because like when I've hunted there late season, that's that food source. I'm like trying to cut sign in around it, cut fresh tracks.
You're looking for locust pods. You're looking for
whatever you can that those deer are coming to in concentration. You're trying to cut big tracks with it because you're not running trail cameras because you're there for a week. Yeah. I mean, you can throw cameras out, but it's like, you're there for a week trying to find the freshest sign. You're setting up on it. If it doesn't work, you're moving on and trying to figure out what it is. And that's like, it's when you do that out there after you've done it here, it translates really easily. But like the big thing here is like just dealing with the topography and like the vastness of some of these properties.
Finding where you need to go. Because, okay, where you're hunting, you see now how hard it is to get a 100-inch 8-pointer 20 yards. It's near impossible. It is. It's so hard. And these mountains, they will make or break you. They have made some really good deer hunters, and they have broke some really good deer hunters. And you guys go out of state, you kill big deer at home. I mean, it's not rocket science. I think we give more credit to deer than what we should. But also, on the other hand, if you just can't physically do it, that's what makes it so hard. Man, I just don't want to go over to that next ridge. I'm 2 miles from the truck. If I shoot one here, it'll be 1 o'clock in the morning before I get out. I definitely ain't shooting no doe. That's how many times I've walked in the woods and I thought, I need some deer meat. I ain't shooting one off there in this holler. I mean, that's awful. If my side by side can't get down there, it's not worth it. I'll tell the story. I killed 132 and 3. He's my biggest North Carolina buck last Saturday on opening evening. I shot another big buck that morning with a recurve. Shot him right on the pointy shoulder. Just is what it is. Hit my arm, made me shoot left. Shot him right on the pointy shoulder. Deer's alive. Got pictures of him. But I picked up that property 2 weeks ago, and we're talking like he was one of my customers. And I said, hey. I do pest control for a living, and I said, I do wildlife control on the side, man. And I said, I can take care of your deer. He said, you know something? He said, they're eating my garden like crazy. And his wife was standing there, and I said, well, honey, I can take care of your garden. I promise you. And I'd never looked at it on a map before. Nothing. I didn't even look at it on a map. I'm like, oh, this is only it's only 100 acres. I can find that real quick, and I can figure it out really quick. And but there's 13,000 acres behind it of woods. I mean, just straight woods. There's a piece of public that's probably a mile down the road from it, and it's 8,000 acres, and it's some of the hard. There's bear sanctuaries in there. It's very, very tough to hunt, and I just walked in there. Told a buddy of mine, I was like, hey man, go with me. We just took off walking, acorn trees everywhere, and I'm going, they ain't here yet. It's just not time. And I go in this pine thicket, and it opens up real pretty to this creek bottom, and I'm going, this is where these deer want to be right now. And it's literally 150 yards away from the acorns. And I said, they're going to be right here. And there's a bunch of old buck sign in there. And I'm like, well, I know these deer are just now starting to shed velvet, but there's no buck sign here yet. But there's 3 or 4 little trails. Not those big cow trails you see coming around that you see around all these public places or private places coming off the sides of the roads. They ain't those cow trails. There's 3 or 4 little, like where it looks like a couple deer's coming here, a couple deer's coming there. And that's a big thing that I look for too. That's where the bucks are. They don't walk down those big cow trails. They walk down those little side trails. That's my experience, and so y'all guys must
I'm telling Andrew I'm speaking next on that point, but keep going. Yeah.
So I get there, and I said, I got 200 pounds of corn in the back of my truck. We just gonna see what's here. Camera didn't work. I said, God dang it. I had a regular camera. All my cell cameras out in the woods, and I was like, well, that's it. I'm taking the day before open day off, or I'm getting it off early, and I'm gonna put a cell camera there. Get a picture of one decent buck, probably 120 inches. Good. It's better than decent, obviously, but and I'm like, well, I guess I'll kill him, because the deer that I had early, and I'll show you guys a picture of it. Deer I had early is a mega giant. They're logging all that property now, so that just went out the window. And I shot my other shooter with a with a recurve, and I lost it. And then I said, well, I'll go in here and shoot this 120-inch deer. It's going to be super easy. He's coming to this corn. It's going to be simple. Well, I go and set up, grab my lock-on limit, just walk in there. Opening day, I didn't have a stand hung. Barely knew what was there. Hung my tree, and it was like these deer, like the Friday evening, they showed up at 3 o'clock, and they were there till dark. And I'm like, well, it's 2:45. I'm going to go ahead and hang a stand in there. I was like, well, I've got to be pretty close to their bedding. There's a Christmas tree field right here with clover all on the sides of it. I said, there's acorns over here that's just kind of starting to drop, and I'm 150 yards away from it. There's this massive pine thicket, and then it just grows up super thick. There's a bunch of laurels in there. I was like, I'm 150 yards from his bed probably, if he's bedding in here. I was like, the wind is terrible. I didn't care. I was like, I'm just going to go try to figure it out. Well, the deer the does didn't start piling in until about 5:30. 5 does come in. I was like, well, maybe they'll show up. I mean, this is 2 hours of what they showed up, or 2 hours later than what they showed up the day before. Well, the does kind of started petering out, and I just looked down the hill, and I just see velvet, and I went, hold on a minute. There wasn't no velvet buck on there, and he's big. I was like, that's bigger than the deer that I had on camera. Then here comes another 8-pointer behind him, probably 120, 125 inches, and I was like, that's a good one too. But he still ain't as big as the velvet buck. And he comes up, and he gets 14 yards, and he's facing me. Just facing me. Standing there eating corn. And I'm going, God almighty. I'm like, you ever get to the point where you watch a deer so long you're no longer nervous? And then as soon as you put tension on that bowstring, it all comes back at once. So I'm sitting there, and I'm just watching it. Well, finally that other 8-pointer come up, because I spread my corn very, very much so, because it's expensive. And he bumped that deer and just kind of turned him. I yanked it back. I didn't hold it probably 8 seconds, and don't. And I said, you can't tote that. He ran 100 yards and died, and he broke off his back G2 while he was running through the woods. Thankfully, the velvet held it on. So like a 10-inch G2 off his back, I was sick, but I talked to the taxidermist, he can fix it. And but I say all that to say this, I probably could have killed that deer without bait, because I went to where he was wanting to be anyway. And that's huge. Like, if you want to talk about a private land perspective, is I don't just throw out a corn pile and somewhere it looks pretty. I throw out a corn pile where I would sit naturally. And it's my camera candy, obviously. And there was just those couple little trails. I promise you I could have sat right there. It might not have been Saturday evening, but I could have sat right there at some point and killed that buck. And that's what I try to look for in the woods, just somewhere natural where they're supposed to be, or where they're going to be, not where they are or where they were. That's what's big for me.
I want to talk a little bit more about the trails. And you're talking about like those subtle trails and the cattle trails.
Yeah.
Dude, where we come from in Alabama, we have a ton of deer, like 40 plus deer per square mile, maybe 50 plus in some areas. Okay. Up here, it's probably like 5 or 6, maybe something like that, if I had to guess. I've never seen trails as big as I've seen here, in as much numbers as up here compared to Alabama. Alabama's like, dude, we have so many deer, but like I've never seen these giant trails. I mean, dude, there's trails here that are 14 inches wide. It's not bear sign, it's all deer, and it's tracked up all over the place. And like where we went, we call it what stairway to hell. Dude, there's trails coming off that point that is insane. Insane. And it made me wonder, kind of like what you're talking about, like those more subtle trails. And we found a few of those. I'm trying to think, something like right off the top of my head. But it's like there are so many big trails that to be honest, is very distracting.
One of those little subtle trails that we found had 2 rubs on it, coming right down a valley. So
it's what it is a big buck wants to let his presence known to other deer, right? Like, I'm the mature buck. I'm the deer that's here. I run this roost. But I'm not associating my scent with all the other deer, because I'm separating myself. This is literally just a theory of mine. It's never been proven, but it's a theory of mine that these deer, they have their pecking order, obviously. And he says, I'm going to go do this. You guys keep doing what you're doing. You little bucks, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds. But I'm going to kind of make my own way, make my own path here, because I can scent check everything that's down there. I can scent check that trail from here. It's the reason why a lot of people say scrapes are nighttime activity only. No, it's just because that's what's on their camera. That buck actually came in during the daylight, but he was 70 yards away. So they make their own trails. To me, like I said, it's just pure opinion, because they don't want to be associated with all these other deer. And so you go and see these 3 or 4 big cattle trails, and then you see that little bitty trail coming off the side. That's the trail I'm going to focus on. That doesn't mean that those deer that big buck don't travel that main trail at all. That's not what I'm saying at all. It's just, for the most part, my experience, these deer are finding those little bitty small trails where you say, it looks like a deer came off that bank right there. Not, there's a deer trail. It's, I think there's been a deer come down that bank, and it's been more than once or twice. That's what I'm going to focus on.
So how did you figure that out? And what gave you the confidence to like really start focusing on that?
I have a man that knows a lot about deer hunting that I learned from, and just I mean being in the woods my whole entire life and putting in a lot of hours in a tree and just saying like I'm sitting on this main trail, but that buck came 60 yards away, and I go over there and just look and say, why did he come here? Why did he do that? And you say, well, that ain't really much of a trail, but you can tell that there's been one there, before. That's why. That's how I came to. Now, they'll use those main trails early season because they're not worried about putting down a lot of scent because their batch were grouped up. But as the season goes on, they're splitting up. They're like, I don't want to be associated with them anymore because there's a pecking order that's coming, but just spending a lot of hours in the woods, man. Thousands.
So one thing you mentioned earlier, and this is what I want to get back to with the trails, is there some situations when you go hunt trail intersections or just areas where there's like just trails kind of working together? What is that typically around? Like, is it like terrain feature wise? Is it like cut food? Like, what do you mean by like potential trail intersections that would make for like a decent sit in the mountains?
So there's a ton of road beds up here.
Yep.
A ton of road beds. And I like where two road beds intersect because they'll cross them, they'll walk up them. I love that. That's one of the main things that I really look for is if I can find two road beds intersect, especially for camera purposes. There's no really terrain feature that is going to be around. I mean, it's normally side-hilled, obviously. But to me, it's just these deer like easy, but they don't love easy. And that's something that I had to understand. It's like, how many times have you sat in the woods and like, why did that deer do that? Like, why did he come? Man, he seems like you would have thought he would have come down that trail.
Came up that steep slope or something.
Yeah, but that deer really actually came from this way every single time. You just not putting two and two together there. And it's very tough because I try to find where trails intersect, but it's for cameras only. It's not necessarily, unless it's the rut. Now, if it's the rut, I want 8 trails intersecting. I don't care if they are cattle trails. But as far as like when it's not the rut, I don't really care if trails intersect. I'm trying to find where that buck can win those trails. And can I shoot those trails? Most likely, but that's not my focus. Like it's within seeing distance for me, but I'm like, where's the wind? Where am I going to be upwind to where I can maybe find where that buck wants to come upwind?
One theory that I kind of have about specifically bucks and how they move is that they'll take the path of least resistance that is the safest for them, right? Mm-hmm. So they're not gonna like if they're totally unpressured and they're just acting like deer, like maybe they'll walk that logging road or whatever.
Sure.
If they got pressure though, then that's when they kind of bail off and they start doing weird stuff. Is that kind of like what you're saying with these trails?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's more of a. I think that a deer. Its nose is its greatest thing about it. It's not its eyes, it's not its ears, it's its nose. And that deer will go where its nose tells it to go, and it's, if they can smell that main trail and they know there's no danger, sure. Yeah, they're going to take that path of least resistance to get to where they're trying to go, because they feel that it's safe for them. But big bucks like to cut. If you're seeing a lot of cutting, and I heard this on a podcast, and I kind of agree with it to an extent. Said, how many times have you been sitting in the woods, that big buck's coming, and then all of a sudden, like, why is he not walking right by this? But all of a sudden, he just cuts and just turns and goes up the hill or comes down the hill. Well, it's kind of like whenever you get home. You walk in your house, not every time you go to the refrigerator and grab a beer, not every time you go to the bathroom, use the bathroom, not every time you go to your bedroom, kick your boots off. Sometimes you want to go to a recliner, sometimes you walk outside. So it's kind of like when you're starting to see that cutting from deer doing weird things, maybe you're close to their bed. I don't know because they feel like they're closer to home. You're at their home. So I try to cut off that cutting. So when I tell you that I go in and focus on food, I want to, yes, I do try to be mindful of where their bed, where can these deer come from? I don't really care where their bed is, but where can these deer come from? And I want to get in between where they're trying to go to and where they're coming from. Now, I want to be able to shoot where they're trying to go to, but I want to get there to minimize that cutting action, and that has helped me probably more than anything, is just trying to cut them off before they cut me off, basically.
One thing that really makes or breaks a lot of hunts, no matter where you're at, but especially I could see it being the case up here, is proper access and how you get into the woods. And I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on this because like you don't really know where they're bedding. They're kind of bedding everywhere. Sometimes they're laid up in the sapling thicket or the rhododendron. Sometimes they're laid up and they're watching 300 yards down a wide open hill. How do you account for that? I mean, what do you do to avoid just blowing a bunch of deer out that, you mentioned earlier, you've seen them get up and walk off before. Do you try to find a low spot and take that up the mountain or wrap around to something side hill, and general thoughts?
So I think that you were focusing on where to access. You need to focus on when to access.
That's a good answer.
It's not where, it's when, because these deer have no rhyme or reason to bed in one spot. They can bed anywhere, but they're all going to bed generally around the same time. So you don't know if he's going to bed on this ridge that you're trying to go to, or if he's bedding where he can see that ridge, or if he's bedding just around the ridge. It's not where, it's when. Now, when you go, that's only really applies to this area in these vast mountains. You go an hour and a half east of here, 2 hours east of here, it's not when, it's where. Right, because it's a little bit more flat land. The deer, you can you need to learn how to navigate because of wind purposes. But here with such a predominant, we don't have a predominant north-south. We have a predominant swirling wind, and I think it's more focusing on okay, why is it I'm seeing all of these beds? There's all this sign, but I'm not seeing any deer, because I honestly think the focus is, well, how do I access it to get it where I'm not scaring them? You're already scaring them if you're thinking that. It's when do you get in there? I know guys that get in there at 3 a.m. They're sitting in the tree stand, and they don't get daylight till 7, and they're seeing every deer in the woods. I know sometimes you can walk in gray light, and you won't jump those deer. It's when are they there? When do they want to be here? I need to be here 2 hours before when they're going to be there. So I think it's just a different perspective. It's just looking at when versus where.
I'm guessing you're a moon guy?
No.
Okay.
No, I've killed more big deer on full moons than I have anything.
Well, okay. Interesting. So how are you determining when they're going to be there?
What time of year is it?
Go on.
So, I mean, if it's the rut, I'm walking in gray light. If it's late season, I'm not hunting in the morning. If it's early season, I'm hunting morning and evening. I'm just getting in there earlier. These deer are so focused on food right now but they say, why don't you hunt the south early in the morning? Why don't people hunt early in the morning, early season? Because those deer are in there at daylight or an hour before daylight, and you're going to scare every deer. Man, if it's a big enough buck, I'll get in there at 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't care. If he's big enough and I know he's in there, and if I can get away with the wind, I will. I'll get in there and try it.
Yeah, well, you were telling us earlier before we started recording that this time of year, you'll leave 3 hours before daylight to go to a spot to try to get in there if you think you have a good opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, if he's a big enough buck, we'll do anything to try to kill him on a legal standpoint, if he's big enough and he's there, what wouldn't you do? And I know people that have gotten their stand at midnight, 11 o'clock the night before, because that deer will show up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and he will stay till an hour after daylight, because that's where he bedded. Maybe he was bedding close, and he knew, he's like, I can't get in there. And it's what are you willing to do to kill that big deer? Because I promise you've said some prayers at night. You've said some prayers in a tree stand. Say, Lord, if you could just give me the strength to just wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, I know I can kill this deer. Because he's in here right at daylight, but I cannot get in here. Yes, you can. I promise you can get in there.
Yeah, that's kind of the thought we ended up having pretty quickly this week, was when we started finding all those beds and that open stuff. We're thinking about afternoon hunts, and I'm like, there's no way we can get in here. And there are some cases. That's why I asked the terrain question, where we would get up on a ridge point and kind of wrap around and get on the point. Mm-hmm. So all these deer on the other side couldn't see us, approaching. And that did end up working. But that's why I asked the question, because it's just man,
If you knew there was a 170-inch deer in that bed, what would you do to get there to kill him? Would you go and sleep in your tree stand?
Oh, I'd be hanging out in that tree,
Sleeping. Would you? What would you do for it? Are you really worried about where you walk in at that point? Or are you worried about, I just don't want to scare him getting in here? When is he not in here? Because it don't matter how you walk in. If he's there, he's there. You're going to scare him. But when is he not going to be here? And that's when I'm going to chase him. That's when I'm going to get there to chase him whenever he does show up.
Well, and how many times, I don't know if you've heard, like coon hunters, for instance, talking about running coon dogs at night, and they walk past a buck at 20 yards at 3 o'clock in the morning, and it just does not care.
Yeah.
Because we don't hunt them in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And
I have my feelings about that. Every coon hunter says, let me come coon hunt your property. I'll run all your deer out, and they'll come back in at daylight. In these vast mountains, you think they're really doing that? When they've got 4,000 acres of the exact same thing you're sitting on? Nah. That deer's bedding there because he feels safe. You run a dog through there, a bear comes through there. I've got pictures right now on my phone. I'll show you. These deer were in there every single day. Every single day. One bear showed up. Gone. So you're telling me that a group of guys with a bunch of dogs that's hollering through the woods ain't going to scare that deer to where he says, well, I ain't safe there anymore, especially a giant. Yeah, maybe your does will come back in. Maybe you spikes, you 4-pointers, but yeah. I mean, I've walked up on deer with bright white lights, and they just shining. Yeah, but he's no longer safe. He knows that's not supposed to be there. We're in his house now. Like, you walk in my house, I'm going to feel violated that you walked in my house, and I'm going to do everything I can to now make myself safe, and that might be moving my wife and my kids into a different house where that's never happened to before. They're thinking the same thing.
You mentioned also early or late season, you don't want to hunt in the mornings. So looking at these woods, and again, how open they get, how are you accessing for an afternoon hunt and staying clean?
My focus is purely on food in late season, and there's no food. There's not as much food up there where I want to be. I do carry a rifle, go to these big mountains and stuff. Honestly, I just walk in at lunch and I'm just peeking. And I'll go sit on a ridge for an hour, and then I'll just go a little bit closer, go sit in another holler, go sit in another holler until I get to where I want to go. Because I'm watching what these deer are doing. I've snuck up on a ton of deer. It is loud, but it's very windy as well late season here in the evenings. But my focus is not, it kind of goes away from the public that time of year. So much hunting pressure has finally hit it. I go back to my private land, and I'm looking for, if I'm not baiting it, I'm looking for briar thickets, some browse, things like that. And if I do scare him and he stops, I could probably kill him because I got a boomstick. So I don't care if I scare him out of his bed. I do not care one bit, because if he stops and I've got a hole, I'm going to shoot at him. That don't mean I'm going to kill him. I'm a big buck. My goal is to be a big buck shooter at her and sometimes hit some of them. So, yeah.
Well, that was one thing I was going to bring up, and I know you said like last year you spent a lot of time out of state hunting, like Iowa, Ohio, stuff like that. But that was our buddy Zach, who was on the podcast, who was hunted up here. You know, he was telling us, and I was thinking about this too. Like, it's already like there's some thicker areas out here, but so much of it's already so open. I cannot imagine what it's like in November with the leaves off the trees, how open this stuff really gets. Mm-hmm. Do you see a shift of how the deer use the habitat, like in these mountains when the leaves come off the trees? And like, are they just going up higher in elevation and trying to bed up there typically, or what?
I can't speak on that as much because I am gone a lot of times early November. I'm not. I can speak on before I started traveling out of state. Yeah, they will a little. Those are still trying to find acorns under the leaves that are still fresh. Sometimes you get that red oak still with the green leaves that are falling in mid-November. But no, because they could still see so good. Now, why would they not be now? They can really see. Why would they not be there? Because they can really see these big, deep hollers now back back early season, they could kind of see these big deep hollers. Now they really can see there.
You probably see it cross them too.
Yeah. So I killed an 8-pointer on the public. I think it's been 3 years ago with a rifle, 241 yards in the woods.
Holy crap.
And if people don't believe me, they can walk with me and I'll show them where I sat and where it was. You can shoot that far in these woods, in these big, big, deep hollers. Yeah, that one side of I told you I like to go in from. Yeah, you can shoot close to 300 yards in there. And I shot it at the very, very bottom. I was like, I know that's a nice buck. I'm pulling the trigger. I'm ground checking it.
What was he just crossing through it, or kind of going down, just straight down the bottom?
I don't know. I was on my phone watching TikTok.
At least he's honest.
I have no idea. I literally just looked up and I went, there's a deer. And I put my scope on it, and he was walking. Yeah, he was walking. And I just seen 3 on top on the right side. And I said, well, I got 2 weeks of season left. I'm just going to ground check him. And I shot him, and he hit the dirt right there. And thankfully, it was downhill on the side of the mountain that was closer to the truck. And I was probably a mile and a half in, and downhill drag the whole way. And he's pretty 8-pointer, 105, 110 inch 8-pointer. I was happy with him. I was like, oh yeah, I'm sure my wife is going to be happy now because I'm almost done hunting. That late muzzleloader in Ohio was coming up, but man, it's to bring it all full circle. When you get here, everything that you know about deer hunting can go out the window. Just put your stand on your back and take off walking. You can look at every terrain feature. One mountain, one ridge will have every terrain feature that you've ever studied. One ridge. And there's 15 of them in there that's just like that. So it's just trusting your gut. I don't care if you're a new hunter. Our new hunters that come hunt these mountains kill our biggest deer just because they don't know anything and they just go somewhere. And sometimes we got to take a page out of that book because we try to figure out way too much about what these deer that we give this deer way too much credit. I have a boomstick in my hand. I'm talking late season rifle. I have a rifle in my hand. I don't have to figure out that much. I just hope you just show up in the daylight. If you do, I'll pull the trigger on you. And now I'm not saying that I've killed a ton of giant deer with a gun, but it's just how I approach it. With a bow, I just think I'm just going to go try to find some food. And I'm going to go try to find some buck sign around the food. I'm going to go try to find, okay, whenever I get there, which way's the wind blowing? What's blowing off the hill? Perfect. I'm going to sit over here to the right. I never get below a deer, below food. I always get either beside it or above it. I never will go below because here you get below the sign, you're doing that. You're looking straight up. And you're shooting like this and you're 25 foot in a tree.
Yep.
You can a lot.
That was me last night. I was sitting on one of those skidder trail logging roads, and there's feed sign on the skidder trail. There's some below it, and there's a lot above it. And I got maybe 16 foot up that tree, and I'm looking. And
you said a skidder trail?
Yeah, that's what the guys in West Virginia call them. Look at those road beds.
And you were here? I think I know where you were.
There was a bunch of them.
Okay, I'll show you on the map.
We'll talk about
after the podcast.
Yeah. But it was cut in, and there's tracks and everything. And I'm like, dude, if a deer comes off the top, because there's some good cover there. The deer comes off the top. I am literally like, if you shot that deer, the exit hole would be higher than the entrance hole.
Sure. Yeah.
Like
it would be like turning it backwards if you're in a tree stand shooting.
Yeah.
Normally
That deer's in a tree stand.
You would shoot them like low brisket, and it would come out like top
back
shoulder.
strap.
Yeah. That's what it was going to be like. And never happened. I was like, okay. And it was one of the steepest. That was pretty.
Have you
rough.
had fun?
Oh yes. I call it. Let me tell you this: the walk-ins. Terrible. Mm-hmm. Worst thing in my entire life.
The walkouts suck just as bad.
I'd rather go downhill.
The weight on your knees.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
That sucks.
Listen, hot tip. You probably already do this. Maybe you don't. But our buddy Zach gave us some trekking poles. Mm-hmm. Unbelievable in the mountain. Going downhill.
Nice. They're nice to have.
Going downhill and you're like bracing yourself. All dude. Because without that, when I was hiking with Andrew, the day before Zach gave us some trekking poles, I was behind him in my head just cussing at Andrew. I'm like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Took him on a death march.
Yeah. And, I just get the old redneck just to give me an oak limb, and I'll do my best.
I picked one up and I tried to give it to him. I saw him back there struggling. I had to wait for him to catch up. I was like, here, dude, take this limb.
You big on packing deer out. Why didn't you pack him up that hill?
I'd have to quarter them up.
I'll show you this picture right here. Me and a buddy of mine, guy I do all my hunting with, he killed a giant in Ohio public. And I don't know if have you ever hunted Ohio before?
Turkey hunting, not deer hunting.
Okay,
Southern
so
Ohio.
you know the terrain.
There's some big.
You start up and go down. There's a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot like that. Yeah.
Okay, so in this piece of public, I was big on trying to think that I was some Billy Bad A and thought I'm carrying every deer I kill. I'm carrying them. I hate dragging them. I have lower back pain. Blah blah blah. Well, I got put to the test on this one. It was a 152-inch deer. I think he was gutted. He was 191 or something like that. It's going to take me a minute.
You threw the whole body in your back. Mm-hmm. Oh no! I'm like, I'll cut one up and do it.
This was back when I was 165 pounds too. I was a stem. I'm still not much of a man, but I try.
You're a stump now, but you were a stem.
Hold on a minute. Yeah, now listen here. I try to, not anymore because, like I said, I hunt a lot more. Private now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I've always hunted a lot more private. Here's a deer I killed just right up the road from here.
All right, you got to send these pictures to us because we got to cut them in.
Okay. I killed this deer just right up the road from here. That was
giant 7-point?
Yeah, he's 131-inch 7-pointer.
I get down with that.
Yeah, that's a good deer.
This is I forgot to show you that deer. That was on the public you were hunting too.
Okay.
So
we're not going to show that one.
We're not going to show that one.
No, heck no.
It's going to be a negatory.
Now I know how every Midwesterner feels whenever they say, "Stop, come hunting our state." You know, it's not you daggum out of staters come shoot our little 100-inch deer. No, please come up here and kill every deer you can. This is such a fun place. This area will make you a man. Will really make you know what true deer hunting can be. And everybody says their state is the hardest. I'm not saying my state is the hardest because I think trying to kill a big giant whitetail in Maine is harder than here. Or trying to kill a big giant whitetail in Florida is harder than here. But what it will test you on here is your willingness to try to kill a giant
mentally
deer.
And physically, yes.
Mentally.
So back when you were asking me, like, did I have fun? Secondary fun, yes. Climbing the hills suck. Once I'm in the tree, I'm like, this is great. I told Zach, like, Dad, I shot my deer. I was like, man, this is great. Like, once I'm in the tree and I'm not dying, but like that 50-minute, hour walk was terrible.
So here's the deer. So that's the deer.
Okay.
That big old kickers off the back. This was me carrying the deer. So yeah, carried him out, just put him on my back like a backpack, and I carried him. He was, I think it was 1,100 yards to the truck, and it was straight up the whole entire way. And yeah, there's a video of me trying to stand up with the daggum thing, and I said, "Grab my daggum hand," and please, I'll show you the video after. But yeah, I mean, but that's what I had to do here in these mountains. My dad always did it, and I was like, well, I think I'm as much of a man as my dad is until I saw that meme
Y'all
the other
would
day.
Carry deer off?
Yeah,
like
we carry deer out.
Oh,
whole
heck
deer. Yeah,
no.
and
Okay.
and he's packed out a bunch of elk. He's killed a bunch of elk and things, but it's just I just don't like dragging deer. I don't, especially out of a hole. I'm not doing that. I will cut them up because I'm a lot smarter.
100%.
I'm a lot smarter. I'm not a very smart man, but I will cut it up and put a jacket on it, and take his hams and his 10-1 and everything I can. But yeah, man, I carried probably 75 or 100 deer like that. Not a very smart man.
No, I'm good. I'll if I had to cut them open with a flint rock, I'm doing that before carrying one out up here.
And it's safer in some ways because you're not going to hurt your back as much as you think.
Or destroy a knee, tear a knee, or then also get shot during gun season. Wouldn't recommend.
I mean, put your orange around the daggum horns.
There's a lot of guys, they see orange and they see that big rack. Whoa! That deer's got a jacket on it.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. That's Peanut.
Yeah.
That's one of the pet deer.
That's Peanut.
Yeah, well, one thing I wanted to bring it with you, because you were telling me about this before we get started, was your, I guess, 3 factors for, being able to like consistently kill big deer. And it was some interesting points, I think. a lot of listeners would probably be interested in getting this take, and I personally want to hear your take on it. But like, what is your thoughts on like those 3 points of again consistently killing big deer?
So whenever I get asked, and I don't get asked much, man. I'm not Chuck Adams. I'm not some just giant buck killer. But the few people that have asked me before, and I would never have an answer, because there is no one answer to killing big deer consistently. But something that I have found over the course of what I have experienced, or people that have experienced that do consistently kill giant bucks, they all have these 3 things: time, money, and support. If you don't have at least 2 or 3, I would say all 3 of them, you cannot consistently kill big bucks. And I say consistently, not once every 5 years you shoot a big one, or once every 4 years, shoot a big one, or even see a big one. But everybody that that consistently kills big deer, whether it's on public land or private land, they have those 3 things.
Yeah, and the time is something I think a lot of people can relate with. Like we've talked about that a bunch of the podcasts. Like you got to have time to not only build woodsmanship, but learn the area and also understand, like getting to the point where you're willing to pass certain deer because there's something else bigger out there, or you have, whether you get trail camera data or you just have a feeling there's something bigger. So you got to have the time aspect. I'm interested. I think I know where the support's coming from, but before we get to the support, explain to me your thoughts on the money aspect.
You got gas money to drive up here? How many of you have a family member that has a house next to the public land? Not many of you. How many of you can pay your bills deer hunting? Not many of you. It takes money to pay your bills to be able to say, all right, I'm sacrificing 3 weeks a year, every single year, to be able to go chase big deer. To where if you're married, and that goes hand in hand with the support side, right? Like I make enough money to where our bills are paid, where I can take that time, and my wife says, go, have fun, right? And they can all intertwine with each other. But when I say it takes money, that doesn't mean buying outfitters. When I say I have enough money in my pocket to where I can spend the time in the woods and away from my family, and I have the support from my family that says go and have fun, do whatever you can. The support from your job, because a lot of jobs, they won't let you off more than 5 days a year. A lot of the money thing for me is more or less just being able to afford to consistently leave and go. Now, some people aren't able to go anywhere farther than their backyard, and they might live in Iowa and kill mega giants every single year. I'm not talking about them, but they have money because they have their own place in their backyard, right? So it seems like to me, and this was just all thought up a theory in my head of what I have consistently seen from people. It's not that they know how to find the best deer sign. I can find deer sign. I can teach you how to find deer sign. I was teaching my 5-year-old today the difference between a white oak and a red oak, and all these things, and what a scrape versus horn tree looks like. And I know some people call them rubs. I call them horn trees.
That's a mountain hunter thing.
Yeah, that is a mountain hunter thing.
That's a southern thing. It's not mountain hunter. It's southern. You go out there anywhere out of the south, they don't call them horn trees. Call them rubs. From my experience, I think it's a south thing.
Okay.
Are you telling me that that you disagree?
I think
saying, no. Please disagree.
No, it's all southern. The guys I've heard that are from Virginia, West Virginia, North Carolina, maybe a little South Carolina,
North Georgia,
and Georgia.
Georgia specifically.
I don't know.
Where are you at there? You in the south?
Well, that's all. Yeah, yeah.
But outside the mountain areas,
like I haven't heard anybody really say that, like where we're at in Alabama. But again, it might be that southern Appalachian area. That's
don't you dare say Appalachian. It's Appalachian.
Appalachian.
It's Appalachian.
I was about to call him on it.
It's Appalachian.
Appalachian boys, not Appalachian. All you two comments, but I think it's like that regional dialect for whatever. Because we've interviewed other mountain hunters in the last week that said the same thing.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
almost all of them said the same thing.
Yeah, outside of like the mountains, I don't hear anybody.
Oh, okay, well, fair enough. Well, maybe I don't get out as much.
Yeah, that's all good.
But it's just trying to find all 3 of those things. That's what I see, that 98% of the people that kill big deer consistently.
Yeah.
You have your one-offs where they had a family member, they live in a single wide trailer, they have no money, but they can go in their backyard and shoot a big deer.
Yep.
Every year.
and just have that spot. But when you think about those three factors, like the money, time, and then the support, which is like family support or work support, all that kind of stuff, to be able to have the time off, I think actually now looking back at it, it's a common factor for a lot of our big buck killers we've had on the podcast. Like one that comes to mind, he's a good friend of ours, is Michael Perry. Like he works super hard and works a ton of overtime in order to take off weeks during deer season, like 2-3 weeks at a time, and do that multiple times because he's working so much time at other points of the year to try to be able for that. Plus his wife's a big hunter. She loves, she'll go out there a bunch with him too, but it's like, it works really well, but he's saving up that money so he can be able to take that time off. Plus he has a great job that allows him to be able to do that. And he's been there for a long time, but that's a common factor, I think, with a lot of guys. Like you got to have the time, got to have the financial, backing in order to either take the trips if you're going to go hunt different places, whether it's in the South or wherever, or also to make sure your bills pay. So if you're taking time off work, you still have, all that taken care of. And then the support of the family. I think that's huge, like, especially the sport. Being a single guy, a little bit different situation. My support's Andrew, make sure I don't let him down on the business side of everything, which I have definitely done in the past. Last Iowa trip was kind of a crapshoot because I was gone for like 14 days and the podcast kind of went in one ear and out the other ear. But also like the support of your spouse, the kids, make sure everybody's on the same page so that if you are taking that time off and you're actually going to go on some trip and you're going to stay away, everybody's on the same page, everybody's in agreement, so there's no issues that could arise.
So if anybody that listens to Working Class Bow Hunters podcast, they have a saying, and it's on a T-shirt. It says, "You can't kill big bucks if your wife sucks." Tell me that ain't true. I mean, you can't kill big bucks if your wife sucks, And I have a podcast. I don't know if anybody's listening here. It's called Hunting the Mason-Dixon podcast. Sorry, I jumbled that up. Hunting the Mason-Dixon podcast. It's on the Working Class Bow Hunter Network. But I'm telling you, you cannot kill big bucks if your wife sucks. Now, your wife might kill bigger deer than you do. There's a bunch of people out there that's like that, but it holds true, and it's just a funny saying, obviously. But man, I know people that, man, they could kill big deer every year. They have the property, but they don't have the support at home.
No, 100%. And I've seen that as well, and it's unfortunate because like maybe it's just the spouse doesn't understand like their passion for it. And actually, I've seen on the flip side, we've got some listeners where the wife is the big hunter, the husband's really not.
Yep.
And it's the same kind of thing. Like, why are you going out there and hunting for 4 or 5 days? And but you're 100% right. Like, you got to have your spouse on board in order to have the consistency to spend the time out there, because time in the woods equals success. Now, you can spend time in the woods in the same tree, burn that spot out, and never see anything. But if you have time in the woods and you're always asking why, you're building your woodsmanship, and you're trying to figure out an area and learn from your mistakes, you're going to be able to kill some good deer.
I bet you money if you stayed here another week, you'd kill a decent buck. You'd kill a good buck.
All right, Andrew, we're staying another 7 days.
I mean,
we kind of could.
I mean, but that wife and that little girl may want to go home.
They don't want to leave here.
Okay, fair enough. Well, stay another 7 days. Here's the thing. When I say all that, it's just what I have seen from going to trade shows. Like, you go and meet all these big names. What do they have more than anybody? It's time. Okay, where did they get all this big property? Well, they had some money, right? How did they get permission? I pay for 2 leases. I've got a lot of land across a lot of states. I pay for 2 leases, and they're both here at home. One of them is just because I keep my camper on it. Another one is just so my wife can shoot it because it's super easy. Everything else is just permission places, But I have her support as well, because I sat her down and I said, "Listen, honey, we had this conversation the other day. Honestly, it was like almost a knockdown, drag out. I had tears in my eyes. She had tears in her eyes. I said, in the very beginning of the first date, I said, "Listen, I'm a hunter. I'm going to hunt. That is way more important to me than you ever will be." I told her that the very first day. I don't say that now because she's the mother of my kids. She's the person that brought me closest to God, right? Well, the other day we had a conversation. She said, "Well, I don't think that you understand that there's no way to realize what that means from a non-hunter." Which my wife had never seen a deer off the side of the road before in her life. She was not a country girl whatsoever. But the way that she said it, she goes, "You as a hunter is not what I expected." And that means taking the time and the amount of money that I spend on it. That's why I can be successful. She goes, yeah, you kill a big deer every year, you get lucky, and whatever, whether you want to call it luck or skill or whatever, get lucky to do it. But she said, there's no way to ever actually understand what that means until you live it, until you see it. And she is awesome. Like, I had a 1-year-old at home and I was gone 3 weeks, and she's calling me every day. Please tell me you kill one. Please tell me you kill one. I want you to come home. But I had that support system. When we got home, she goes, you're not doing that for the next couple of years. You're not going out west for weeks. And I'm going, don't be that wife that sucks now, because I want to kill big deer. But also, on the other hand, I'm at a different part of my life than most people are. But yeah, man, just having that time, having that support, having the money to be able to do it. I think the money part is if you are with somebody, a significant other, that they can feel like they're not left in the dark, right? The time part is big, will go against if you have kids. A lot of times if you have little children, what's more important, spending time with your kids or killing big deer? My kids, they want to see daddy kill a big deer. They want me to bring on big deer. I disappoint them most of the time. But there's usually once or twice a year that they're like, oh, yeah, daddy killed a big deer. All right, daddy, it's time for me to take you. But then the support is from my family, my job. Like, I took the job while my owner of my company was sitting next to me to do the podcast. I was like, hey, listen, I apologize, but I have this opportunity here. What do you think? And he's like, I'd love to see you be doing it full time. Just come here whenever you want to and come work. And I'm like, man, how many jobs could sit there and say that to you, and I have that. And that's why I've been able to be successful. And that's what I've brought it down to. It's not my knowledge of the woods. It's not my woodsmanship. It's not how many acres of property that I can hunt. It's not how well I can shoot my bow, how well I can shoot my gun. It's just because I have so many things that go the right way in my life, because I know a lot of people that are terrible hunters that kill a lot bigger deer than I do. I know a lot of people that have a lot more access to land than I do that kill giant deer. That there's so many other aspects. So that's why I come up with that in my head,
Andrew, what's your thoughts on that?
No, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, really, most of the guys, kind of like Jacob said, who honestly have their lives together, those are the guys who do the best. Yeah. They're not. It's not the guy who, works a crappy job and doesn't care about what he's doing. He doesn't have any aspirations for the future. It's the guys who are ambitious, who care, and who plan for that stuff. Those are the guys who are successful, not just at deer hunting, but for everything. I mean, you go down a rabbit hole with this, and people screw up a lot of those things. They'll screw up the money part, just because they get their goals all jumbled, and then they don't put themselves in a position where they can provide for themselves and go do the things that they want to do. Or when it comes to the relationship aspect, that's a big one in the hunting world, man, because a lot of guys get in bad relationships. They don't set expectations on the front end, or they
choose a deer over their spouse.
They choose
or girlfriend. It's happened to me.
I mean, dude, it happens.
Listen.
Boyfriend, girlfriend. It's 2024. I mean, I understand. What are you trying to tell us?
Listen, when I went to Iowa the second time,
he was dating a girl.
When I came back,
he wasn't dating her anymore.
Dating her for a little bit. That was it. Yeah. That was the straw that broke the camel's back.
I mean, the thing is it's very easy to mess up one of those three things. And if you mess up one, it's easier to mess up one of the other two. Then it's easier to mess up just all three of them, And the biggest thing for me, I don't care about my time. My time is more focused on my kids and my wife. I make enough money to where I can support my lifestyle and I can support every bill that's paid. My biggest thing is I have support from my wife whenever I say, hey, honey, I got home today. I'm like, hey, I got a podcast. I'm going up there at 7 o'clock today, or I got to be there by 7. What do you need from me before I leave you and the kids? I said, what do you need from me? It's not, and that's not her telling me what to do. I mean, I'm not too proud to say that my wife dictates a lot what I do. She does, because we have kids. Now, when we didn't have kids, she didn't tell me a damn thing. I did whatever I wanted to do. But also, on the other hand, now it's, what do you need me to do? So it makes it easier on you. I cleaned out the litter box. I took out the trash. I did all the dishes. I did a load of laundry. I finished all my weed eating. I did all these things. I got the kids' milks together, put them in the fridge. I say, all right, honey, what else do you need me to do before I leave? She said, no, go ahead, go. But it's because I'm willing to do that for her, is what helps. That's why I get that support, because I give it as much.
Well, it's communication.
Well, guys miss that part, man. And a lot of guys, they'll usually, it's like two parts. Kind of like you said. You set expectations at the beginning. You say, hey, I had the exact same conversation when me and my wife were engaged. I was like, if you want to break this off, you better do it right now.
Yeah.
Because this is what we're doing.
It's a one and done for me, and I'm never getting married again. I want to stay married to you, but...
Yeah, and that we had the conversation, and like you got to set expectations, but then also when you're in the relationship, you got to be the man, and you got to do the stuff. You have to be there. You got to make her feel secure. And most guys either don't do either of those or don't do one of them. They'll set expectations at the beginning, and they're like, hunting is my passion. I'm going to hunt. It's what I do. And then when the time comes and they're leaving the dishes, they're leaving the kids, they're not doing their stuff at home, and they go hunting in Iowa or wherever for 2 weeks. And then their wife is like pissed about it.
Yeah.
And they're like, but it's the most important thing in the world to me. It's like, well, dude, you just left her at home.
So here's what she said to me the other day, and probably shouldn't even talk about it, but heck with it, I don't care. She's not going to listen to this. She said to me this. She goes, what it makes me feel, and this is me speaking from a woman's perspective, because it was basically jammed down my throat, and I'm going, God almighty, I feel 2 inches tall, She said, I know hunting is your most important thing to you in your life, but it's a hobby. And I'm like, no, it's my passion. Well, golfing is some people's passion, soccer, baseball, all these things. But it's something that we do to have a release. It's part of a mental health thing, right? As much as it is anything. But what's worse? Being out there and all you think about is, damn, she's going to be pissed whenever I get back. Or is it going to be, I did everything in my power I could to help her, so I don't have to worry about that whenever I leave. And a lot of guys miss that, because she told me, she goes, a lot of times I feel like deer hunting really is more important than me and the kids, and I feel like I'm a single mom. And I looked at her and I said, honey, that is never my intention, but it don't matter if it's your intention or not. That's what's happening, because they don't have the same passion and the love for it that we do. There's very few and far between out there where the wife and the husband both share that same passion, where they love it. I know a couple people that are married that have that same passion, but for her passion is the kids, and she wants me to be there for the kids as much as she is. And if you're a father and you listen to this, I promise you, your wife is thinking, I wish that he thought about our kids and me as much as he does a deer. And as soon as it gets deer season, they are sitting there thinking, how much is he going to be involved? He's been here for 9 months. He's been here, like our season ends in January 1st. I know y'all's season ends at the end of February. My wife, after Thanksgiving, is done. She's like, I am ready for you to be home. And it's usually after rutcation, sure. But she says, I just want to know that whenever you're out there, you're thinking about us, or whenever you're here, you're here. Don't worry about deer hunting. Don't worry about all this. And now, I'm like, well, honey, I'm sorry. It's what's on the forefront of my mind. It's why I'm successful. It's because I'm constantly thinking, where do I need to go hunting? What's going to happen here? What's going to happen there? But giving you as much support as we get from our family, our friends, and I'm not saying spousal support's the only part of the three. It's family, friends, job, everything. It's a whole full circle there. But if you are married and you have kids, make sure that there is not a goat with horns out there that's more important than your little boy or your little girl. There ain't a goat with horns out there that's more important than your wife or your husband. There's not. It's an animal, and they're everywhere. You can go and shoot one out of a truck window if you really wanted to. If you really care so much about an animal that you have to have your likes on Instagram, or if you have to have your recognition from people that really don't care that you killed a deer. But your family does. Your family cares that you're home. Your family cares that you have that. But if you can reciprocate that, you will get that support that you need, that you don't have to worry about that you can spend that time and that money, because you have that support. I think is the biggest of the three. not time, not money.
Yeah, definitely. And I appreciate you bringing that up, man. That's something that doesn't get talked about a lot. And I mean, just being straight up honest, I see a lot of guys who are as passionate about hunting as I am who ruin their lives because of it. Straight up. And it goes even with, outside of the family relationship, the job thing, like you're talking about, it's the same exact principle for your job, man. If you're working at a job, like, you better be one of the best people there, and you better have good relationships, and you better work really hard. So when the time comes and you want to take off time,
that cold front hits.
You ain't got nothing. You want to have their understanding. You think if you've been clocking in late, or if you've been, doing everything halfway, you think they're going to be okay with you just taking off time? Like, no. You make it undeniable by when the time comes that you want to go take that time. They're like, yeah, man, I know how hard you work.
Yeah.
And it's all about the relationships that you build with the people around you.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's such a huge part of it. No one ever talks about that.
It's an untapped conversation. It's very, very untapped. And I talk about it in my podcast some, about how, that conversation starts. You can't kill big bucks if your wife sucks, and how we deep dive into the mental health part of, I just had a guy on not too long ago, and it was big. We were big on mental health. Like, there's probably been a lot of suicides that have stopped because somebody got to go deer hunting. There's probably been a lot of things like people didn't leave their wife or didn't leave their husband because they got to go reset. There's a lot of people that were saved by the Lord because they got to go hunting. And that's something that's huge in my life. Obviously, God's big in my life. And my wife knows that. And she knows, like, I don't go to church on Sundays, but I go sit in a tree stand and I find, I have my time closest to God. But also, the biggest thing is, okay, I'm going to scratch all that. Communication.
Yep.
It's communication. It's not, you don't technically just have to sit there on the couch with you and watch the kids play. They're not asking for, my wife personally, and I assume that this is probably pretty blanket statement across the board. As long as you have good communication, I tell my wife everywhere I'm going, she has full access to my phone. She knows where I'm at all times. I'm not scared to admit that. I love that she knows, and it's full communication. Hey, honey, I'm sorry, but I'm going hunting tomorrow. Or that's if I'm on a trip. But I ask my wife if I can go hunting. How many men out there that wants to be a man, they say, I'll ask my wife if I can go hunting. I'll hunt if I want to. Yeah, your marriage ain't going to last long. Sorry, buddy. Your marriage ain't, your wife is probably either talking to another man or she's trying to find security in somewhere else. I say, hey, honey, what do I need to do to be able to go hunting this Saturday? She knows I'm going hunting Saturday. She already knows, but I give her the respect to know that she is more important than that goat with horns. She's way more important than that. And my kids are way more important. And now that I've killed a big deer early, I still got one more buck tag. I got 4 more months of deer season. She wants to go to some fall festival. She wants to go get her hair did by her sister. And I sit there and watch the kids. I don't care if it's cold front. What do I care? Now, whenever I go out west, it's a little bit different story. I'm not going out there for a vacation. It sucks. Those aren't vacations. You're up earlier than you ever get up, and you go to bed earlier than you ever went to bed. You're just like, you're done with it after about 4 days. But, just keep that communication with your wife. Don't be afraid to ask. Because most of the time, if they know that you love it and you have put yourself out there for her, as much as she's willing to let you leave, she is letting you leave. The kids at home, whether you guys are coming up to podcast with some people that's completely out of state and your wife stays at home, she's letting you do that. Because now it's your job, obviously. It's your full-time job, but it's still, you travel for work.
Oh, yeah.
That's tough, man. That's tough.
Man, she's been up here. She's had dinner ready every time we come into the house.
That's a good woman.
She made us some sandwiches this week that were unbelievable up on the mountain. They were so good.
Why didn't you call me? I wanted the sandwich.
Dude, big old homemade sourdough.
Please say 7 more days, because I
listen.
I know where this place is now, and I kind of work in the area, and I want a sandwich. I'm hungry.
That homemade sourdough. Came here with 2 loaves, and they'd been gone for about 2 days.
They didn't last.
Just give me a gas station bologna sandwich. That's all I need, But and Hunt's Brothers Pizza. That's all I need.
Oh, hey man, Hunt's Brothers.
That's how you get to look like this, Hunt's Brother Pizza.
Bush lights for me.
Yeah.
That's what it is. But yeah, man, it's I guess the biggest takeaway is stop giving deer too much credit. Stop worrying so much about wind and angles and access and stuff like that. Why was our granddaddy and our daddies or our uncles or our buddies' uncles and daddies so successful and they had none of this at their hand? Why were they? Because they went deer hunting.
Dude, that's excellent, man.
Yeah, they went deer hunting.
That is excellent.
Nobody deer hunts anymore. Everybody Instagram hunts.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah. Dude, I'll tell you what, on that subject, kind of touching back on the woodsmanship aspect, everyone, it's fun to talk about real complicated theories and tactics and
sure,
whatnot.
Absolutely.
It's so popular.
It's part of the conversation. It's
yeah,
part
especially
of the world
nowadays
that we're
with
in.
like social media, like it's real trendy. And, I've definitely been caught up in that. And I've found myself in these last couple of years having to unlearn stuff that I tried to figure out back, years ago. Trying to be overcomplicated with it. And I mentioned my mentor earlier, Ben George. He's been on the podcast a couple times, but he killed a hammer of an 8-point last year, giant 8-point in Alabama. And you know how he found that deer? He took his 2 beagles out to the management area, ran them rabbit hunting, killing swamp rabbits, jumped the buck out of a pine thicket, went back 2 weeks later and killed it.
Yeah.
And he's done that in the past with squirrels. He squirrel hunts, and that's how he finds his deer. He doesn't have he barely even knows how to work his phone, and he goes out there and he just walks it, and he lets the woods kind of carry him to where he needs to go. Because you're going to go out there and you're going to go through the saddles. You're going to walk the benches. You're going to walk that path of least resistance just like the deer want to. And especially if you're chasing game, they're going to bring you into places that you probably wouldn't have gone to anyways.
So I told you earlier that I don't do any preseason scouting. Most of it's because I know these properties and I've hunted them for years and years and years. Our preseason scouting is when we turkey hunt, when we rabbit hunt, when we grouse hunt, because all of those are in this area. And there's
you just piqued my interest.
Yeah,
we get bird dogs, by the way. So,
yeah, I mean,
grouse caught my attention.
I've got the private land that we can go.
All right, when are we going?
So
for real, we'll be back
after deer season. Okay. So I don't shed hunt. I've found some sheds. I just like turkey season here starts early April. There's not a lot of green in the woods yet up here in these higher elevations. So you can see deer trails. You can see where all this early food is. Grouse hunting, you're walking these mountains more than probably you are deer hunting. And you can really find it then. And like I said, we're hunting the same properties. I only get maybe 1 or 2 new places a year, and then I'll kind of shift them off, say, I don't like that place. And if that was the only place I hunt, I'd probably kill a big deer there every year. Or not every year, or every other year, just because that one year it didn't look good, I never hunted again, or I never stepped foot on it again. But that's kind of how we do our focus between, it's just getting in the woods. No, and I know that I'm going to get ridiculed for saying this, and I'm okay with it. No map has ever killed a deer. No weapon has ever killed a deer. It's you that's killed the deer. It's going and sitting in the tree that's killed the deer. Showing up whenever the deer wanted to be there. What's the definition of luck?
Where preparation meets opportunity.
That's right. So, but where do you gauge how much preparation versus that opportunity? Because you can prepare all year and the deer never show up and it was for nothing. You may have learned a few things. You'll learn more what not to do than what to do by preparing all this time. But what's more satisfying? Grabbing that bow, putting a stand on your back or a saddle, tree diapers, what I call them. I have one, so I can say that, okay? Okay, YouTubers, I can say that.
Dude, these YouTube comments are going to be wild.
It's going to be wild.
I'm just going to call it right now.
Yeah. Take that stuff and just go hunt like your granddaddy did. And you'll be way more satisfied than going, God, where'd that deer show up? I know he was there yesterday. God, look at them cameras. God, he was there every single day, and then I show up, he wasn't there. Or, man, the wind wasn't quite right, so I didn't go in there, and he showed up. Or, man, that tree just, it's falling them acorns like crazy, but why didn't he show up while I was here? Stop worrying about that, man. Just go get in the woods and just go have fun, because there's not many people out there. Do you remember your best golf game?
Actually, yes, because it wasn't very long ago, but yeah.
Okay. How many of those stories can you tell about your best golf game?
Just one.
Okay. Do you remember your best time that you ever went out and played disc golf?
I've never played golf.
Yeah, I love how you went to disc golf with him and not golf.
Yeah, you read me like a book, bro.
Yeah.
I've played exactly 0 rounds of golf in my life.
Yeah. Listen, I'm in sales. It's my job to do sales. I got to read people, right? But we do things, but you can remember that time that squirrel climbed down that tree and started barking at you. And you're like, my God, please be quiet. That big buck's going to come in and you're going to scare him. We have something it's a lifestyle for us. And if you think too much into it, you're going to actually make that lifestyle suck for yourself, because you're like, man, I spend thousands of dollars on gas and corn and cameras and subscriptions and all these things, and I never kill a big deer. I never kill one. And then every time I come home, the more I'm gone, the more my wife cusses me, because I spend all this money and all this time and I never do any good. But, man, you just go walk in the woods and you go sit down. You're thinking, okay, let's just say it this way. You have an excuse to not kill one then at that point. You can just, honey, I didn't know anything about the property. Or, buddy, I didn't know anything about the property. I just went and sat down, went and hunted. Boy, it's the best. It's the most. I have properties I do not run cameras on for a purpose. I just go and hunt. Just because, and that's the most relaxed hunting. Because if I know that big buck is coming in, it's like, oh, God, he's going to be here any minute, and he's just going to show up. But if I don't know he's there, I don't know anything about the property, and I just go walk in and sit down. If I see one doe, I say, well, maybe I just got to change something tomorrow. That's the perspective that I have looked at my whole entire hunting career.
No, I love that. It's kind of bringing back, we talked about this recently, but like simplifying deer hunting, because so much stuff gets so complicated. And I feel like, we interview some individuals who are, kind of like in that more woodsman perspective, that is very much a simple approach. It's like based off experience, how you hunt, versus like other individuals who use a lot more technology, whether it's, mapping, it's cameras, there's so many different things that could, you could complicate what you're doing and overthinking. Sure. And definitely like the overthinking aspect is, to me, where you don't have the fun.
Yeah.
Like, I think the most fun I've ever had deer hunting, I've had a lot of fun very recently, but like most fun I ever had deer hunting was when I was in college. Didn't have any cell cameras, started hunting public land. Literally would just look on, like, we didn't even have Onyx maps at the time.
Is it like a GIS or something like that?
I would get on Google Earth, I'd get a paper map that wasn't aerial imagery, just property boundary or public. And then I'd find roads, I'd get on Google Earth, and I would compare them and then overlook and try to see how it looks. Go pick a spot, walk in there, and either see deer or didn't see deer. Get shot opportunities or don't get shot opportunities. And it was just like low pressure. Like, I'm like, I want to go kill something, but I don't really know what I'm getting into. And you start getting in there and you start exploring. And, it was more so worried about like, how do I get back to the truck once I go in here? Because I don't have any way to track me. Again, now it's so different because, like with Onyx, I can track myself and know exactly where I'm at all times. Back then, it's like, didn't necessarily know that. It was pretty easy in some of those areas to get turned around. Other areas, it's pretty easy to walk the drainage back up. I got to know I got to hit certain drainage, go back up to the truck. But it was just enjoyable because you go sit, and it was a lot of blind sits. I wasn't scouting a whole bunch back then. And like when you actually saw a deer, whether it was a fawn, a doe, spike, you're like, this is awesome.
You check your cameras and you know that there's 2 4-pointers, a spike, and 3 does coming in, but there might be that one big 8-point shows up. Well, there's that spike, there's that 4-pointer, there's them does. Okay, where's that big one at? But you're not happy because you didn't see that big one. If you don't know that there's anything there and take the cameras completely out of it, I went and found deer sign, and I seen they were little, but I seen a spike and 2 4-pointers, and I seen some does. I'm doing something right, and that's big for me. And I'll talk about this. I'm gonna rag on myself here a little bit, and I'm not very proud of it. I was making fun of people that were buying saddles and getting into this fad of mobile hunting.
I remember that. I remember that.
I was making fun of people hard.
Yeah.
Because it's how I grew up hunting.
Yep.
And I'm like, all this has become a fad now. Everybody just stopped wanting to pay for outfitters, stop buying leases and go to this. And like, 5-10 years, they'll go back. They'll get tired of shooting 100-inch deer on public land. They're going to go chase big deer. And I did it for years, man. I did. I was like, these people on this page, like it was one of y'all's pages.
I remember.
And
dude.
I was like, these idiots, man, they just buying these tree diapers and they hanging this, they one sticking and doing all this stuff. I'm like, just go deer hunting. Then I got to thinking about it. And I was like, they're trying to become woodsmen. And I should never rag on somebody that is trying to do what I learned to do. And so I gained a new perspective. You know, there's always still those people you just shake your head at. But for the most part, it's people trying to learn. And I was never a bully. I'm just not that way. But I was just like, at that time, I'm not proud of who I was 5 years ago, because I was like, this is just a fad. These people are idiots. They don't know what they're doing, but they're trying to learn something. And all I had to do was say, I know, I don't want to be the guys like, I know a lot about this. Message me if you have any questions. And like, honestly, I'll be like, I'm wondering why Jacob and them ain't messaged me about being on this podcast, because I know a lot about mobile hunting. But then I got to think about it. I was like, well, probably because I'm an asshole, you know? And I'm like, look at me, look at me. I mean, y'all guys are being, and I'm not saying y'all two in general. I'm just saying like just the whole fad of, oh my gosh, mobile hunting is the new cool thing. No, actually mobile hunting is what it's always been. The cool new thing was, hey, now people are selling deer hunts and you can go buy a deer hunt. That was the new cool thing. A lot of these people now are trying to go back to the old school tactics. Then they have this in their hand. That's what I was making fun of. What I didn't realize is I thought I was making fun of the people. But what I was making fun of is like, man, if they don't have that in their hand, they're lost. Just go hunting in the woods. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, if they don't have that in their hand, they actually might get lost in the woods, So, but like I said, I'm not proud of how I was back then, because I knew what I was doing to an extent enough to where I could kill a deer every year, a decent buck around here every year. And just people just wanted to learn. And I'm just like, I'm high-nosing them. I'm high-hatting these people. And I'm like, I got to stop doing that, because then people will actually approach me, and because I want to help people. Like, I love to see people. I don't care if you kill a 4-pointer or a 190. I don't care, or a 190-inch 4-pointer. I don't care. And
That'd be interesting.
Yeah, that would be
Mega.
I just want to see people do good.
Mm-hmm.
If you got questions, shoot me a message. Like on Instagram, my handles are bowhunter_Jones. That's my personal. And then I have my podcast one is Hunt MD Pod. And then you can just find me Jordan Jones on Facebook. And I want to help you. I will tell you, I'm never going to tell you my spots, but I will tell you in this type of terrain, I'm pretty well versed in it. I know it pretty well.
Well, and I get the whole fad thing, because like we grew up always using climbers. It was either like we go to our private property, uncle's farm, sit in a lock on, shooting a house, blind, or a ladder stand. And then as I was getting a little older, like high school, started using climbers, college using climbers pretty much exclusively, then transitioned to a lock on sticks, used that for 4 or 5 years, and then switched over to saddle. And it's interesting when someone's gone from none of that, and it's always been like lock-ons, like preset lock-ons, preset ladder stands, blinds, and then they want to go to the complete other extreme, which would be mobile sticks and a lock-on, or saddle and sticks, whatever, or even people that didn't even use climbers before they went to that. And it's weird when you're used to climbing trees. I was used to climbing trees, and then like you talk to somebody, we get listeners like this too that like they've never done that, and it's such a different perspective because they've never done that before. They're like, well, there's certain things that we do that's like second nature. Like when I'm climbing a tree, like how I have my gear attached, how I have my pull apart attached, how I'm going to approach the tree. That like the new guy going out there, he doesn't understand any of that if he's never done it.
Yeah.
And
see, I don't attach myself to the tree at all until I'm sitting in my stand. Like I don't use lineman ropes.
Oh, you're psycho.
No, I don't do it at all. I just figure 4 around the tree as I'm screwing in a step or hanging a ladder stick. I mean, but that's how I grew up doing it. And I viewed the fad as the vegans of the deer hunting world. You know, that's like, you got to let somebody know that you're a saddle hunter. You got to let somebody know you're a public land hunter.
like the
You
whole
got to let
CrossFit.
somebody, yeah, like if you don't do CrossFit, you're not working out. If you're not killing a deer on public land, you're not a real hunter. Well, man, I killed a 132-inch deer in velvet the other day, and his nose was full of corn. You know, and it was full of corn. As much as I know about, I say that, I'm starting to sound pompous there. I'm not saying like I know everything about it. It's like, as much as I know about killing deer naturally, I want to kill the deer. I'm a killer. I'm not a looker. I don't like to look at them. I like to kill them. So I viewed that fad, and like, because I grew up in this, and like, yeah, all these people are coming from their box stands, but what I didn't realize is it was becoming boring to them, and this is a new thing, and you're trying to learn it, and here I am being a jackass, basically, just telling these people like, like, I never like came out and said you're an idiot. I would never do that, but I just hi-hat them. It's like, I don't even want to look at that. I don't even want to be a member of this group anymore. But then I'm going, wait, I love this group because this is my people. These are the people that I am. And I'm just thinking that I'm better than these people, and that's wrong. That's the worst part about it. So now, I mean, cuss me if you want, you know, call me out on I don't care. That's totally fine, because I'm trying to be man enough to say, hey, I apologize for hi-hatting anybody if I ever did. I want you guys I want everybody that's learning that. I want you to learn. I want you to come to North Carolina and see how bad it really sucks to hunt here. And when somebody like Nathan Killen kills a 170-inch deer, you know, on public land, you know, how hard that really is. Like, he just killed a giant last year or whatever, whenever it was. And the people that do shoot, like, you see what we just saw right here?
Yeah.
Dude, everybody's shooting that deer.
100%. We
And-
had a really nice buck in front of the cabin earlier. Yeah, so we took some videos of.
Yeah. It's this style of hunting between public land hunting, mobile hunting, having your time to be able to do it, having the money to be able to support it, having a wife to be able to support you, or having a husband to be able to support you. That's what's going to keep your mental health there to where you want to keep going and going and going. I don't think there's no new product that will ever help you kill a deer. I don't care how many sponsors there are in the world that may help you get to the woods or may help you get pictures, but just spending time in the woods and gaining that knowledge of the woods, how deer operate. Why do these deer blow? Why aren't they blowing? Why are these deer hitting this white oak but not this one? Why are these deer hitting that red oak whenever there's 3 white oaks over here raining? Why are these deer using this trail? Why did they got this big, huge community scrape, but they're hitting that one little bitty one right here? This licking branch over here. That there's so many questions that there's never an answer to. And I just want to put a bow in my hand, put a tree stand on my back, and I want to take off in the woods and just go sit in the woods and see what happens. And that helps me be successful in any state I go to. I don't think I'm a better hunter than a Midwest hunter. I don't think Southern hunters are better than Midwest hunters. Because you ever hunted a 200-acre soybean field?
Yeah, it's not fun. I've done it.
It sucks.
Especially bow hunting.
It sucks worse than sitting on a corn pile or sitting on acorns. It does. It sucks because you're sitting there. The worst part about it is you're looking at them.
And you can see them.
You can't shoot them.
Yeah, they're 150 yards out in the field.
Exactly. But if it's all about, we're so caught up and wrapped up in technology and the how you killed the deer instead of just killing the deer, or instead of just sitting in the woods. People get so, I think it's the people are getting so wrapped up in how you do it. Stop worrying about the how. Stop worrying about the why. Worry about the when. Worry about the when. When are you going to go in there and go kill that deer? Because how many people do you know get a picture of a giant buck and like, yeah, I'm going to go after him Saturday, and it's Monday, and you're like,
He gone.
he ain't gonna be there. Unless you lucky like I was, and that had a heck of a corn pile, and it was early season or it was late season. But it's when. When are you going to be there for your wife and kids? When are you going to be going to the Midwest? When are you going to be chasing that big deer? When I think is the biggest question. When are you going to do it?
Yeah. Yeah, and I know you said that you're not big on the tactics talk. We were able to pull it out of you this evening.
Yeah.
I think we covered some good ground. You already mentioned it, but you got your own podcast. Plug it one more time. What's it called?
It's called Hunting the Mason-Dixon. It's
Hunting
on
the Mason-Dixon.
Yep. It's on the Working Class Bow Hunter Network. We have a gun podcast for any gun hunters out there. It's called Victory Drive. We have a fishing podcast called Tackle and Tacos. We have a taxidermy podcast called the G2 Taxidermy Podcast, and it's getting all your big taxidermists around. It's a once a month, and most of us we do like once a week. We drop an episode. Mine is not. We don't focus on tactics. Obviously, there's some of that in there in the talk, and it's mostly in the storytelling. We're a pure entertainment podcast. Like, it's pure entertainment. We're unedited, uncensored, which I think is needed in a lot of ways, but also I think this podcast is needed. The styles we do are a little bit different. And it's still the same. We just sitting around, hanging out and having a good time and talking, but it's more or less stories. It's not as much education. And if you want to find education, come to this podcast, because I know there's a lot of big buck killers that come on this podcast. I'm interviewing everybody. Well, not everybody, but I tried to do that in the very beginning, was like try to just get anybody that would get me some episodes out, and I deleted my first 10 episodes because I was like, these people can't talk. I can talk to a stop sign, and once you get me going, I don't usually stop. But yeah, it's a fun podcast. If you've ever listened to Working Class Bow Hunter, I'm the same style, and yeah, man, we have fun with it, and I'm hoping that years to come that it gets more into that's what I want to do for a living. But for now, I'm just going to sell killing bugs. So
I heard that, man.
Killing bugs and killing bucks.
That's right.
That's a T-shirt you need.
Shooting at bucks.
Shooting
at bucks.
Being a buck shooter at her.
So big buck shooter at her. That's going to hopefully be on a T-shirt. But
that better be on a T-shirt.
Yeah,
and I want that T-shirt.
Okay. So my signature line is digging taters. Go make one, dig taters. You know what digging taters is?
No.
You ever shot a deer in the shoulders and he puts his shoulders down and he's running?
Yeah, okay.
It's just like a tater
trench.
digger. Yeah, he's cutting a trench. I mean, if you call it whatever you want to, but I call it digging taters. Whenever, like, I shot that deer the other day and he dug taters all the way down until he died. And that's always like how I sign my podcast off. I say, go make one, dig taters. It's that time, boys, and it works out, because it's so true. And yeah, I hope to get don't steal that damn idea.
Already working on the shirt design, my man.
Hey, you know what? Teach their own, But yeah, I'm a big buck shooter at her, and
if you don't make that shirt, we might. So you better make it.
That's fine. That's fine. And what
I give you 10%.
I'll tell you the design. 10%. Hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. No, wait a minute.
All right. Give me a grouse hunt. We'll work something out.
Yeah. I get all revenue from that for 3 years, and then I'll tell you where you can go shoot a Tweety bird. But I appreciate you boys having me on here and letting me vent a lot and stuff like that. And I don't know your time limit on it or whatever, but I feel like it's been pretty good.
Yeah. No, it's been awesome.
I'm a very opinionated guy.
No, I call this one a banger. I like it.
No, this has been fantastic.
Yeah,
it's been good.
So, yeah, I'd like to come back on one day.
We'll get you back on. We'll be back up.
I'll have you on my podcast one day, and then I'll let you boys go uncensored.
The story you need to get Andrew to tell on the podcast is when he found a dead body out in the woods on public land. It's a story worth talking about.
Okay, all right,
we'll set it up.
All right,
we'll do a podcast.
So
all of our listeners are gonna be pissed because we've talked about it before. I don't remember the episode numbers.
We probably told it way back.
It's like 3 times we talked about it. It was like episode hundreds
years
well,
ago.
We'll just say this: I'm gonna get you boys uncensored. Is what it'll be. I'll get you boys uncensored, and we'll have a good time. That's what I like to do. I think everybody has to have that avenue sometimes because you got stuff you want to vent about.
Let's go, man. I'm down.
All right, man. I appreciate it, man.
Awesome. Well, guys, appreciate y'all listening to the podcast. Appreciate you watching the podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, go leave us a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts or a 5-star review on Spotify. All the YouTube listeners or viewers, appreciate y'all sharing the show, leaving comments, and I'm sure we're going to get a bunch of comments from this episode. A lot of great stuff that we talked about today, but appreciate y'all watching, appreciate y'all listening. We'll catch you back here in the next episode from the Southern Outdoorsman Podcast. And remember, guys, y'all stay Southern.
Go make one, dig taters.